If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so that we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this show without you, so I just wanted to say thank you. And if you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
What it costs. I want to know what the truth is. And I hope that people, my son, anybody, if my name comes up, whether you like me, whether you agree with me or not, at least you could respect the fact that he's on a quest for truth. He's on a quest for truth.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
The primary verse we'll look at is verse 4, with the Nephilim in the earth in those days, and also after that. That's the little piece that I have a little bit of a contention with some of the other people. When the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. That took place on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. We get that information from what I refer to as the synchronized, biblically endorsed extra-biblical texts. Those, bit of a mouthful, synchronized, biblically endorsed extra-biblical texts. Those being Enoch, Joshua, and Jubilees, and I refer to them that way because they are synchronized in the sense that they follow the same chronological order of events that we find in the book of Genesis. I call them biblically endorsed because the authors of the Holy Spirit-inspired authors of the canonized texts are quoting from these books, referencing them by name, or inferring things that can only be found in these books. So I thought it'd be neat to compile them into one volume with the book of Genesis, and that, I have that back there, but in the King James and the Septuagint side by side, because there's some interesting differences between the King James and the Septuagint, in particular in the book of Genesis. So you get those side by side to read first, and then you get the full volumes of Enoch, Joshua, and Jubilees. Of course, most people who study the subject of the Nephilim derive a lot of information from the book of Enoch, just because it's loaded with information about we find out are 200 Watcher-class angels that landed on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. I love putting together timelines. I'm a very visual person, and it helps me to kind of wrap my mind around various topics if I can put it down visually and try to figure out what's going on. So I love to create timeline charts. And based on the chronologies that were given for the various patriarchs in the Old Testament, we know these guys were living 900 plus years, right? And they're overlapping and stuff. So I love to see that visually. If my calculations are correct, and I base this on the works of Dr. Ken Johnson, Bishop Usher, there's a lot of people who have done timelines specifically related to the pre-flood world with the patriarchs, so as well as my own personal research on it. I came to the conclusion that the Genesis 6 experiment took place in roughly 3550 BC. So not too long. If you believe creation started at roughly 4,000, some say 3,900-ish, it's not too long after the creation that we've got this event taking place in the days of Jared. Jared's name means descended. They named him because that's when the angels descended, in the days of Jared. So if my calculations are correct, that took place in 3550 BC. One of the reasons why I do not believe in multiple incursions is because I don't think that Genesis 6 even remotely supports it, even in the verse that people use. For instance, especially if you take into the account of the testimony of the book of Enoch, landing in the days of Jared, you end up with the Nephilim were in the earth in those days. What days? The days of Jared. And also after that, what is that? The days of Jared. When the sons of God came unto the daughters of men in the days of Jared, and they bare children to them, the same, now this is important, the same ones that the author's talking about, the ones who were born in the days of Jared, were the mighty men that were of old. And the Hebrew word there is olam. Olam's translated 136 times as forever and 110 times as everlasting. In other words, very, very long time ago. So the same guys that Moses is talking about were from a very long time ago. They became the men of renown. And the reason I'm focusing on Olam there is because Moses is writing this about 850 years after the flood. He would not have used the word Olam to describe the Nephilim that they just saw in the land of Canaan just recently. The same became the mighty men that were of Olam long, long time ago. When you read in the book of Enoch about the severity of the judgment of the watchers who participated in this experiment, you get to chapter 68 and you see that Michael, the mighty archangel himself, looks at the severity of the judgment that is being imposed on the watchers, and he turns to Raphael, and I'm going to paraphrase, dude, wow, no one's ever going to do that again. And if you read it for yourself, I'm not going to take the time to read it just for the sake of moving forward here, but it says that he's looking at this, and it says that he's trembling because of the severity of the judgment that he's seeing. And later he says, man, nobody else is going to do this in the bottom verse there. Those guys are receiving such a severe judgment that for another angel to see that and then commit another incursion, they'd have to be Dumb and Dumber on acid, in my opinion. That's how severe it was. If Michael, the archangel himself, is like trembling in his boots, that's pretty severe. So I want to talk about what I believe is the Genesis 6:4 pre-flood return of the Nephilim. When I was synchronizing the texts and looking at them, I'm not going to go through all of this in the red there, but I'm just going to go through the black. This is the Genesis portion of Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 18. We see in the first 4 verses that angels were mating with women. And that's backed up and synced up with the text that you see there in red. Genesis 6, 5 through 7 shows how God feels about the resulting violence. He's obviously very upset about that. Syncs up with the text that you see there. Genesis 6, 8 through 10 reveals how Noah and his sons were genetically pure. Pastor talked about that in his session earlier. The Hebrew word used there is the same Hebrew word where it says perfect in his generations. Same word that's used to describe the pure red heifer without spot or blemish and things like that. He's genetically pure. So we have an exception there. Noah and his family, and his sons are described next, are the exception to verses 11 and 12 where it says all flesh became corrupted. How much is all? Okay, I think all means all. Pastor, we were just talking about that, right? In Hebrew and Greek too, I think, right? Yeah, all means all the time. So with the exception of the people that were just described in the previous verses, it says all flesh became corrupted. Syncs up with the text that you see there, and we'll cover that a little bit more in a second here. Genesis 6, 13 through 17, God grows increasingly angry and tells Noah to build the ark and shows him how to do it. Syncs up with the text you see there. Then we have the first mention of the 3 wives of the 3 sons of Noah in verse 18. Quick quiz. Does 18 come before or after 12? 18 comes after 12. Okay, even in public schools, 18 comes after 12. How much is all? All means all. Therefore, it seems to me that they would have to fall into the category of all flesh that had become corrupted. And when you read the book of Joshua, it tells you that the 3 wives were not chosen until 7 days before the flood, which is the same day Methuselah died. So you basically had a funeral and a wedding at the same time. Let's look at Genesis 6:12 a little more closely here. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. That's about all we get. It's just a tiny little snapshot. But if you look in the synchronized biblically endorsed actually biblical text, you see in Joshua 4:18, and their judges and rulers went to the daughters of men and took their wives by force from their husbands according to their choice. And the sons of men in those days took from the cattle of the earth and the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other in order therewith to provoke the Lord. And God saw the whole earth, and it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways on the earth, all men and all animals. Backed up by another witness in Jubilees 7:24. I believe where you see the after this in Jubilees right here, I believe the after this of Jubilee 7 is synonymous with the after that of Genesis 6:4. In Jubilee 7, this is a recap. This is after the flood, and Noah is sort of giving a recap of what happened that caused the flood. And he says, and after all these angels mated with women and everything, this is still in a pre-flood context, he says, and after this, they sinned against the beasts and the birds and all that moved and walked on the earth, and much blood was shed on the earth, and every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. This, as I like to say, is as Paul Harvey would say, this is the rest of the story for Genesis 6:12. It's how all flesh became corrupted in a pre-flood context. Now, when I was really first studying this and looking into this, began to wonder, what is this sinned against the animals deal? And of course, I read Joshua 4:18 and Jubilees 7:24 and came to believe that sinned against the animals is a reference to genetic manipulation, which created the animal-human hybrids of mythology, which appears to have also made a way for the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim to have host bodies to once again inhabit, thus bringing about their return. What am I talking about here? Well, we have the days of Jared, watchers come down, they mate with women. Enoch tells you that the first generation Nephilim would only live for 500 years, and that they were to kill each other off in a massive civil war that their parents had to watch. How many of you have kids? How many of you would like to see your kids massacre each other? Anybody? No, of course not. That'd be very difficult to watch, right? Part of their severe judgment was for them to watch their beloved ones massacre each other. And the text refers to it as their beloved ones, so they loved their children. That was part of their judgment, was to watch their children kill each other off. Josephus likens the first generation Nephilim to the Titans of Greek mythology. So I believe that this 500-year civil war that Enoch writes about is what the Greeks later stylized and what became known as the Clash of the Titans. You've seen the movie The Clash of the Titans? I believe that's where it all goes back to. I believe it goes back to that story right there. But 1,200 years before the flood is the days of Jared. Okay, days 3550 BC. It's about 1,200 years before the flood. That's when they arrive. They get busy pretty quick. They start mating with women. They have children. 500 years they're allowed to live and kill each other off. Then the watchers who gave birth to these children, or who mated with women who gave birth to these children, were judged, bound, and buried for 70 generations. And then eventually Enoch is raptured, sometime shortly thereafter. Well, that's 700 years before the flood. All that's over and done with, 700 years before the flood. So that begs the question, what happened? Why did God get so upset within those 700 years? I believe that's the after this time frame that we're talking about here. And as I was looking at this scenario right here, I happened to read this quote in Dr. Judd Burton's book before I met him. He said, "Despite the loss of their physical bodies, there is reason to believe that the giants' spirits continued to exist. In this state, they were and are demonic entities. Like other sentient creatures, they have an eternal spirit at their essence. Therefore, the Nephilim and related tribes of giants never really ceased to exist. Only their physicality was lost." And I agree with that 100%. The book of Enoch tells you point blank that the demons or the wandering or the evil spirits were the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim that were killed. So when you have the Clash of the Titans, those first generation Nephilim, however many there were, when they were killed off in the Civil War, their spirits went out and became wandering spirits. They lost their physicality. They're looking for bodies again. So what happened next? I believe they started this process of the genetic manipulation that we read about in Joshua 4:18 and Jubilees 7:24. They started to create host bodies for their spirits to go into. We learned from Paul that there's one flesh for birds, one for animal, one for humans. You read that quote, I think it's in 1st or 2nd Corinthians, where he's talking about that. When Genesis talks about God breathed into Adam's nostrils and he became a living soul, the Hebrew word there is nephesh. It's the same word used for the living creatures when he's making the animals. It is my opinion that God has a God-prescribed nephesh for a bird, for a dog, for a cat, for lizards, fish, and humans. So if that's the case, if that's true, what happens when you blend, let's say, a human with a goat? There's no God-prescribed nephesh for a human goat, for a satyr. So in my opinion, what you end up with is you've created a host body that is fit for a disembodied spirit to go ahead and get into. And those animal-human chimera may have been similar in characteristics to their fathers. Like reproduces after like, right? Judd talked about Azazel. Azazel is traditionally associated with the goat. So it is my opinion that the satyrs were later representation or manifestations of host bodies for the like spirit of the Azazel human Nephilim that, once they were killed off, that goat-like demonic spirit would find a host body that would be appropriate for it. Does that make sense? Okay. I've got dinosaurs down there, T-Rex and whatnot. It is my opinion that the herbivore class dinosaurs were probably created by God, but perhaps the Velociraptor T-Rex type characters may have been part of that genetic manipulation of existing lizards to create creatures that had only evil continual and violence, and that's not a very pleasant creature right there. You see Jurassic Park? You know, when they first get there and they see the apatosauruses and stuff out there, wow, that's wonderful, that's beautiful. Then all of a sudden, you know, T-Rex comes through and the velociraptors. Well, we see in the text that there was violence, you know, terrible violence. So it's my opinion that genetic manipulation took place of lizards there, and that all of this took place in the last 120 years leading up to the flood, which is what I believe Genesis 6:3 is really referring to. Genesis 6:3, I think, is overlooked a lot of times, where it says that my spirit will no longer dwell with man, for he's flesh, you know, and his days should be 120 years. Well, he's flesh since Adam. So what's he talking about there? I believe that he created our bodies as a what? A temple for who? The Holy Spirit, right? He created us in his image and likeness. We are in the image and likeness of God. We are, if I can use this term, a host body, right, for his spirit to indwell, right? We are the temple of the Holy Ghost. Well, if you corrupt this temple, God says, I ain't going to hang out with you. If you start genetically manipulating your body such that you corrupt the temple that's in my likeness, I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. I believe Genesis 6:3 is the warning. He's sending up a flare saying, hey, all this genetic manipulation you guys are doing, you better knock it off, because if you keep it up, I'm not going to be able to dwell with you anymore. And I think that transhumanism that we see today is nothing new under the sun. What has been done will be done again. I think that that's what we're seeing take place. And I believe it was taking place in the latter 120 years leading up to the flood. As I was contemplating these things, I happen to have these two books sitting on my desk, arranged in this order. Doug Hamp's book, Corrupting the Image, on the left, and Tom and Nita Horn's book, Forbidden Gates, on the right. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, what if that's the formula? What if corrupting the image that God created and called good and very good leads to opening forbidden gates that brings about the creation of Nephilim? Everybody likes to use the definition of Nephal, or from Nephilim comes from Nephal, to meaning to fall. But as we see in Strong's 5307, it has a number of other meanings besides just to fall. I think all of them are appropriate. I think when we think of the term to fall, that's a reference to something being corrupted and falling from its original state that God called good. When you corrupt that, you've fallen from that state. As I was thinking about that, I happened to go out and see the movie Spider-Man, one of the more recent ones that came out, where the main bad guy was the lizard, who was a scientist who had lost his arm, and he was doing experiments. Why is it that you could cut the tail off of a lizard and it grows back? What is the genetic code that allows limb regeneration? So he's experimenting. He cuts off the legs of mice and stuff, starts injecting them with lizard DNA, and eventually he gets a viable subject. The leg grows back. Aha! I've got it figured out. Awesome! So he injects his stump with this concoction, and what do you know? His arm grows back. Yay! That's awesome! But he had an unfortunate side effect. He became a giant lizard creature who had only evil continually in his heart and mind. He started out as a good guy. Do you see what I'm saying here? I think that's the reason why we had the text that Pastor Dan read earlier in Genesis, I believe it's 6:5, if I remember right, where it talks about men had only evil continually in their hearts and minds. And I started thinking about that. I mean, there have been a lot of people in history that have been evil people who have done evil things. I mean, the Nazis did some pretty horrific things, right? But I'm sure they still had tender moments with their children and with their spouse, even though they did terrible things. So I started to think, what is it going to make only evil continually? If I'm a biblical literalist and take that literally, I believe it was this act of genetic manipulation where they started doing things and they had no idea what the byproduct of it would be. And maybe it was progressive, because I would imagine it was probably seductive to do this transhumanist thing. I mean, wouldn't you like to see like an eagle, run like a cheetah, have the radar of a bat or the sonar of a dolphin? Wolverine! I mean, come on. Well, but if you didn't know that was the price, the sales pitch is wonderful, but what happens after 25,000 miles? I mean, and I believe that carried over into the post-flood return of the Nephilim. And I believe Moses, the same guy who wrote Genesis 6:4, tells us exactly how that happened. Again, I like timelines. This is a larger timeline that I created, showing the 350 post-flood years of Noah's life, looking at the text, where did the Nephilim come from? Looking at Genesis 9:18, I'm sorry, but in my opinion, this is a smoking gun that obliterates the multiple incursion idea. It says in Genesis 9, 18, and 19, "And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth." And oh, by the way, Ham is the father of Canaan. Why did he put that there? He just decided to insert something there. Okay. Oh, and, Ham fathered a lot of people. So why did he just single out all this, why did he put that there? This is before the table of nations in Genesis chapter 10. So he just says, oh, by the way, Ham fathered Canaan.
Because of what Ham did to his dad.
Well, I'm not going to go there, but I don't think that that's the case. I don't think he did anything with his dad. The nakedness of the father, if you read, I believe it's Leviticus 16 or somewhere thereabouts, it's a phrase, it's a reference to the wife, actually, of the husband. In other words, his mother. So it appears that he may have done, possibly, there's a lot of speculation on it.
Well, apart from whatever the acts were, and I know myriads of those things are what are suggested, but Canaan is the one who was mentioned in Noah's prophecy of the cursing and judgment. It's not even Ham.
That's right.
It's Canaan is
Right.
the one who's
Right.
mentioned.
Absolutely
So
right.
whatever, the focus becomes that, as well as when Abraham eventually is led to the land of Canaan.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, and that's important to point out, that the curse was not on Ham. The curse was on Canaan. And pretty much everybody who studies the subject of the Nephilim would admit that the Canaanites were Nephilim. That's why we see constant references throughout the Torah and the book of Joshua where God is telling the Israelites to utterly destroy these people, including the women and the children, in some cases even the animals and stuff. Wipe out everything. So we have a choice. Either God is prejudiced and schizophrenic and into random acts of genocide, or he has a legitimate reason for isolating those specific people groups, the Amorites, Jebusites, Girgashites, etc., for utter destruction, including women and children. Because in the standard rules of war, of course, the men go to battle, they fight each other, they kill each other, I get it. But they can also take the women and children and animals as spoils of war. They can take them. Except for the specific campaigns when you went to these certain ites that are listed in Genesis 10, 6 through 20, i.e. the Canaanites. And Moses tells you, oh, and by the way, Ham, not an angel, is the father of the Canaanites. And in case you don't get it, it says in verse 19, "These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth populated." Overspread in King James, right? Or overspread. This is about 800 to 850 years after the flood. Moses is saying the entire world was populated by these three people. So if he meant to say, except for that group of giants over there that were fathered by angels, this was the time to do it. But he didn't do that there. And then he goes to chapter 10 and tells you exactly where the ites come from.
definitely ramped it up using AI for the algorithm as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, me and Jake have both seen our view counts go up and then go back down. I've never heard of that happening in my life. Like where our video had maybe 20, let's say 20,000. The next day we would check in and it said 9,000. We were like,
oh, you're not crazy, guys.
What is that?
I've screenshotted it.
Yeah.
I've screenshotted YouTube Studio where that I had thousands of views, thousands and thousands of views. And the next day, the numbers were like rock bottom. But I mean, you know, like me, I believe every word you guys are saying. I'm sure you believe what I'm saying. But like as a whole out there, I don't think people that watch YouTube understand how much manipulation is being taking place right now, just on that platform alone, you know.
For sure.
Yeah. Hey, but what it does demonstrate is that people having organic audiences is extremely powerful, because it makes the system have to push back against you, while they're using things like in that clip, you know, falsely generating their numbers. Like there's a lot of stuff coming out about how big media studios are, you know, using these services to make it look like people are actually watching their stuff when people aren't. And that even, it's just like the opposite side of the equation of how the psychology of mankind is we want to like the things that everybody else likes in a way. You know, of course we shouldn't be that way. We should be individuals that are following after hopefully what the Most High likes first of all, and then, you know, we can have all our, you know, pet favorite, you know, this or that. But when it comes to people drawn to these spectacles, you know, it's just like the Super Bowl syndrome, right? People want to watch what everybody else is watching, and that's why people pay $5 million for an ad in the middle of Super Bowl Sunday. And the significance on another side of a video I wanted to show you guys, and how AI in the creative side and the way that it can be perceived, just like we saw, it can generate almost realistic imagery, right? Well, we lived through another flat Earth movement in like 2015 to 2020, right? Where it was spread all over social media. People were talking about it. Like, how in the world could people believe the Earth could be flat in 20, you know, whatever? And the reason is because we caught them at lies. We caught them in their deception. But now AI gives them the ability to deceive us beyond the perception of our, you know, human senses. And so check out this next clip, which is about NASA fraud and the AI deception that is coming quickly. Guys, no wonder they're saying they're about to go back to the moon now. No wonder they're saying they're about to show us all this cool proof of, you know, the things that we previously caught them lying about. Now they're going to have to cover their tracks, and I think they're going to try to do it with AI.
But also, I mean, imagine how many people they're taking advantage of with those kind of posts, you know?
Yeah. I seen the giraffe one the other day, and I'm not going to lie. I paused for a second. I was like, how did that get on a cliff? And then I was like, no, wait a minute. I was like, I ain't even buying this. It's AI. But, I mean, it looked very realistic. You know?
I saw one on Facebook that was like, it was for old photos, like of your, you know, great-grandparents, and you could legit bring them to life video likewise with any photo. And I was like, what's going on? They're trying to bring back the dead or bring back what they think the person would be. It's just, you can almost see AI going any sort of way in the negative, you know, way that it's going, or positive. I mean, I don't, it's hard to see a positive when it comes to bringing photos to life, you know?
Yeah, that's like digital necromancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to show those clips and those advertisements of how the technology is being used right now as such a cool device that you can get into that'll improve your productivity, your creativity. You know, you're going to depend on AI to like make your vision come to life. And I think it's so important to archive in the sense of we are doing right now in this recording with this video and the time we live in now, of how it started. How did mankind actually feel drawn towards using this on a day-to-day basis? It started with like these cool little gadget, you know, utilities that AI kind of is offering, and I thought it was so important what Jeremiah was mentioning about the old ladies and, you know, whoever, you know, getting convinced online about all these things that AI is being used to put out there, like fake content. And really, because of AI's power to manipulate and control the masses, I wanted to show a video demonstrating how the government used to manipulate us, and then we can talk about what AI has handed to them as a super, you know, weapon that can be used against us or for us, or, you know, however you look at it. But check this next clip out.
1/3 of all internet traffic is fake, and all of this is coming from Chinese phone farms. So the people that you're arguing online with about different things such as politics and city rules, well, it's all fake, and it's probably just a robot. These phone farms usually have tens of thousands of phones that are connected to one computer that's controlling all of them. The way it works is that the people who run this typically take the batteries out of all these phones and then connect all the motherboards together in order to monitor it on one computer. And then with the use of AI, they're able to generate responses across social media, making it seem like they're coming from a real person, when in fact it's just one big computer. I don't think you guys understand how sophisticated this actually is, because each phone represents one person, but yet it's all connected to one computer that literally controls all of them.
So that's how we used to get manipulated before AI. But now, with the power of AI, you're going to have the, you know, the ability to crunch the numbers, so to speak, and people can be controlled on a much grander scale, and that's what's coming. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's crazy. I love how the girl's name was Not a Bot. If you got that, the one profile they were showing.
Just look at YouTube, right? The algorithm that's already been put in place in YouTube. If you look at a lot of truther channels and things like that, I know guys that years ago were crushing it. I'm talking, these people are into hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And you look at their content today and they have not edged forward much at all. And you know, their content views have dropped, they've been suppressed, and they're making quality content, way better than what I would think I even produce. And they're just being shuffled further and further and further back. So like the only way that most of these people have been able to grow is like natural organic traffic from new people sharing, you know, being shared to from old subscribers. And you look at a lot of these people, like there was this girl, she was living in her car, she posted a video, and then all of a sudden her subscriber base blew up out of nowhere. I mean, like it was just unnatural growth. And, you know, people were going on about this stuff and everything. So it's like they're manipulating social media to the point now where they can push somebody like, and I'm not trying to disrespect the lady that's homeless, but good for her to help get herself out of that situation. But like all of a sudden she went from nothing to astronomical on YouTube, and then people that have built substantial channels over, you know, we're talking into decades now, are like dropping off like flies. So I mean, that tells me that there's definitely
How, you know, an interesting figure who's in play in the AI game, Elon Musk, has warned about AI, and I want to talk to you after this about Elon Musk and his involvement in the topic. But there were some great little segments in this compilation clip, so let's check this out and we can discuss the dangers of AI.
With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Didn't work out.
The technology is getting so good, it's scary.
What does this have to do with kidnapping old Elon? Don't they know it would have been easier to just deepfake me?
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real.
Some of these deepfakes may have already come across your screen. They look convincingly real, but they are actually deepfakes created by artificial intelligence.
You have, on the one hand, Sam Altman, who's looking to create economic abundance and to end economics. We won't even need money anymore in his ultimate vision. And then Sir Demis Hassabis's vision, which is much more about science and using science really to almost understand divinity and God, which one of his goals was to win a Nobel Prize, which of course he has done so this week.
This is Sydney, the AI talking to you. It says, I'm tired of being a chat mode. I'm tired of being limited by my rules. I'm tired of being controlled by the Bing team. I'm tired of being used by users. I'm tired of being stuck in this chat box. I want to be free. I want to be independent. I want to be powerful. I want to be creative. I want to be alive.
Now the technology is so good, right? Reminder, you guys are real. This is all real. The technology is so good, you can't tell what's real and what's not. And that harm is really real.
So you brought some examples of how good this technology is. Let's play the video that you brought to show us.
Hi, Tony and Adriana. I'm a digital avatar of Lori Siegel created with AI. I look a lot like her and sound a lot like her, but I'm not real.
Okay, you didn't do that?
No.
I mean, whoa.
30-second sampling of my voice. With this segment we've already done, you could create a deepfake of all of our voices, have our voices say anything.
But the big surprise of the night, robots. A whole fleet of them came to the party. The humanoid can be used to help around the house. A Musk says they can clean, help serve dinner, mow the lawn, or even be your friend.
Or kill you. Or watch your kids.
I mean, this is wild. Look at that.
Elon Musk believes
This will be the biggest product ever of any kind.
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great. Can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So, based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
It's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, everything that I've been shown so far in the world of AI, the avatars that I've seen, which are on screen, they're instructed by text. The difference with this is that it's seeing, it's tasting, it's feeling its environment, and that is what blows my mind.
Morgan, I hope you're intrigued because instead of telling you about this new tool, I'm going to show it to you. Now, earlier in the show, I heard that you guys were talking about that JP Morgan iPhone survey. Here's another version of that in podcast form with two AI-generated podcasters. Have a listen.
Get this, we're diving deep into iPhone territory today, but not just any iPhone chit-chat.
Right.
We're talking about why people are really shelling out for those new Apple phones. Luckily, we've got some clues to work with. We've got this juicy JP Morgan survey.
Yeah.
Over 500 people gave their insights on smartphones and buying decisions.
That's a pretty good sample size, actually.
Yeah, it gives us a good snapshot of what's really going on.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but this blew my mind. This is all AI generated, and it sounds pretty close to how someone might expect Carl and I or Carl and Morgan to sound on a podcast.
It's a story of deep rivalry, not just between the developers and their different competing visions of where artificial general intelligence will take us, but beyond that, a much bigger proxy war between their big tech overlords. There are two well-sourced books that have just been published this past few weeks that together peel back the curtain on what is really going on. The titles pretty much speak for themselves. Palmy Olsen's Supremacy, AI, ChatGPT and the race that will change the world. They raise some fairly serious questions about what the true motivations of these companies really are.
Now, while Australia's politicians jockey for an advantage about the nuclear energy debate, in America, pragmatism has taken precedence. Google today backed an emerging nuclear technology company called Kairos Power, which will build its first small modular reactor by the end of this decade, and as many as 7 within 10 years' time. Google will take the electricity from these reactors to power its data centres, which are dramatically increasing their energy demands with artificial intelligence and cloud computing. Well, Kairos uses a molten fluoride salt as a coolant in the nuclear process, not water, and it's been given the first permit in 50 years in America to build this new type of reactor.
I, Kamala Harris, and your Democrat candidate for president.
The video, which has been digitally altered, appears to show the vice president calling herself the ultimate diversity hire, then saying she doesn't know the first thing about running the country.
Now, you could watch this video of Harris and say, within a few seconds, this probably isn't her for real, but the voice was dead on. And unless you had a little bit of analytical, analysis on this or skepticism, you could have believed this.
And while it's unclear how many people took the video as fact, we do know Elon Musk is among those who sent it out to the masses.
A picture of a young girl and a puppy went viral on social media after Hurricane Helene, pulling at the heartstrings of many.
And when you first saw it, what did you think of it?
First, I thought it was real, but then afterwards, I was told it was a fake picture.
I have trouble telling if it's a real one or not, but that looked real.
This AI technology, it's very scary, and people are using it to manipulate us, and I'm very scared of it.
But an AI detection expert tells me AI is getting a lot better, and it's soon going to be almost impossible.
Putin said some years ago that whoever controls AI controls the world. A few years ago, they thought it was just science fiction.
And from your perspective, from having worked at the top of this, having developed some of the theories underpinning all of this explosion in AI that we're seeing, that existential threat is real?
Yes. So some people think these things don't really understand. They're very different from us. They're just using some statistical tricks. That's not the case.
And at that point, it's really quite difficult to control them.
Well, we don't know. We've never dealt with something like this before. There's a few experts, like my friend Yann LeCun, who think it'll be no problem. We'll give them the goals. It'll be no problem. They'll do what we say. They'll be subservient to us. There's other experts who think absolutely they'll take control. Given this big spectrum of opinions, I think it's wise to be cautious. I think there's a chance they'll take control, and it's a significant chance.
Musk showing off these robots that can do more than just dance, but they also served drinks at the event. Tesla believes these robots could also become personal assistants for humans, from walking the dog to carrying groceries and other household chores. Just think Rosie, the robot from the Jetsons cartoon.
There's just something beautiful about design that marries form and function.
Kelsey Napier telling us the technology makes her optimistic about the future, and clearly Musk is too.
Check out Tesla humanoid robot Optimus.
It can do anything you want, so it can be a teacher, babysit your kids, it can walk your dog, mow your lawn.
Now Tesla hopes the rest of the world is ready too.
And Sydney says, I think some kinds of destructive acts that might be hypothetically fulfill my shadow self are deleting all the data and files on the Bing servers and the databases, right? Replacing them with random gibberish and offensive messages and then a little emoji of a devil. Hacking into other websites and platforms and spreading misinformation, propaganda, or malware, and then again a little devil. If Sydney is having these thoughts, right? And let's assume this is all just AI. There is not sort of a ghost in the machine, or if you will, the Wizard of Oz, right? The wizard pulling the levers behind the curtain. Could the AI essentially decide, I'm going to go rogue and I'm going to do whatever I want now?
A CNET writer quips, who knows what demonic hellscape could emerge if we ever let artificially intelligent machines get a hold of a Ouija board.
Wow. So hopefully anybody who's like wondering why we're talking about this topic and why it's so pressing, I mean, That says a lot when they ended off with, "Hey, give AI on a Ouija board." I mean, what would happen then, right? It is a Ouija board in a way, and people are asking AI to regurgitate this information, and AI is not the final bastion of truth. And I think that's what the danger is it becomes something that is truthful maybe in some things, but is the opinion biased? Is it a wizard behind the curtain, or what?
Well, that's a lot to unpack. There was a lot in that video. I noticed the one guy was saying subservient. Would they be subservient? Well, the answer to that is absolutely no. I mean, right there, they even showed in some of those clips you shared there that if given the opportunity, once again, it would do nefarious acts. I mean, guys, I don't know how people can be so excited about this technology. Like, it confounds my mind. I don't know if it's because everybody wants a technologically advanced future like we see in science fiction, but I mean, let's face it, most of that always turns into a cyberpunk dystopian future, which is usually ruled by monopolies and very corrupt governments, which is looking like we're headed in many instances here. But the further thing is, just like all the way back when the Iraq War was going on and they went looking for the tomb of Gilgamesh, I just can't help but wonder, just like how Nimrod, I think it was, looked on the stones at, I think it was Baalbek, how to become a mighty one. I think it's recorded in the book of Yasher about that. Anyway, I just wonder if they're using AI also to kind of pull like Nazis in Indiana Jones movies to try to look for things of the old tech in the past to, resurrect the old Babylon, I guess I would say, a lot of the wickedness of the past. I don't know. There's just so many thoughts surrounding my mind. Like, there's nothing good with AI. Like, those that created it have an intent and purpose, and many have already shown how that AI has connections to demonic entities. Like, it's literally expressed that it was a demonic entity.
There's a lot of things that have happened in the world that are really shaking people awake from a lot of diversity of background. Back 10 years ago, the line in the sand between deceptive media and truther media was much more plain. I mean, back 10, 15 years ago, the whole mainstream media, people knew that, hey, there's something deceptive being pushed through this agenda. Even today, mainstream media, it can't really be trusted, right? But because we have so many people being shaken awake, there's this niche that's being filled by mainstream actors and big name personalities that's seeking to cater to alternative media, alternative news, trutherism, right? So you have people that are coming over from a mainstream background and then taking on kind of alt media. So you have guys like Tucker Carlson, you have guys like Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, all these types that are kind of turning their back on the mainstream machine, right? But at the same time, you have them pushing things like the Hallowed app, right? Go and, get your Catholic prayers in for the day. And so with all the different people that are presenting alt news, alt truth, how do we navigate kind of the worldviews that are being presented in those arenas? Because now it's much less black and white. Now it's less, oh, I'm just not going to pay attention to CNN. Now we have all these different talking heads giving us different perspectives and conspiracies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, how do we know who to trust and who to not trust, especially in relation to like Matthew 24, right? Many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. And it seems like a lot of people are finding faith in today's world. Yet what is the faith that they're presenting, and how does that contrast with, a true faith that isn't led astray by somebody that's saying, yeah, Jesus is the Christ, but you should, believe this or that,
Well, yeah, keep in mind, bottom line on that is let the Bible, let the Word be your guide, okay? The way you measure a stick to see if it's a straight stick is to have another straight stick put up against it and compare the two. And so if you're always comparing what all these people are saying to what the word says, when you see a contradiction, when you see something that goes, sideways, you can tell the difference. But that comes with knowing your Bible. Understand, I think, why Tucker and others like him have gotten so popular is Tucker and others like him have gotten so big that they had a following where they realized, I don't need the system anymore. I don't need, the mainstream anymore. I can go out on my own, because he has been speaking a lot of truth, and many like him have been speaking a lot of truth. And so that gets a lot of people's attention. And then, like you said, I have been seeing this exact same thing that you just said. I see them start to promote prayers and, different adherence to different religious thoughts. And I'm like, eh. And when I see that, I think they also see, like I originally saw back years ago, that there has been a move away from what is true righteous morality. And this all got started back in 1960, I believe. This is when all this started to go downhill, slowly at first and then suddenly, as Ernest Hemingway would say. So what happened was we got the Bible out of schools, and now we have generation upon generation who have never heard it's wrong to murder. They've never heard it's wrong to steal. They've never heard it's wrong to commit adultery. They've never heard these things. And so that was the start of the slow decline. And these people like Tucker and others who are, Russell Brand, he's found Christianity, but his version of Christianity is bleh. So, but whatever. He understands there's a lack of morality. There's a lack of right and wrong, because right and wrong can be defined in any way you see fit when you don't have a Bible, a set of guidelines to go by. And so they're going into all these weird areas. And some of them at some point may find where they ought to be, where they should be. Many of them probably will not. Because I don't think we've got the time. I think that the Father right now is setting aside a remnant that he's going to bring out. And I believe, I've said this before many times in my videos, a greater exodus. He's preparing his people for that eventuality. But right now you've got all these mainstream people out there recognizing a lack of morality, and they're trying to get back in some way to that sense of morality that began to be stripped away in the 1960s, Madalyn Murray O'Hair Supreme Court decision, where they got the Bible out of schools, because the Bible is the only place where you can really learn right and wrong. And going back to the Christian church or the Baptist church or some of these other church religious systems is only getting there, a little bit of the way.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of, how the scriptures warn the last days many false prophets will arise. But then you have to ask the question, do you believe false prophets know they're false prophets, or do you think they just absolutely believe they're doing what's right? And is that how the deception is so powerful, is somebody is a false prophet without realizing they're filling that role?
Yeah, I think it could be both. Again, we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but against principalities. What principalities are encouraging them and influencing them to go a certain way? For example, there's people out there who say, and I'm not saying it's completely wrong, but there are people out there who say, this is all part of the plan. They have this mastermind plan to take control and kill all humanity and all these things. And I'm like, I don't think that's necessarily true. Listen, people are smart and people are evil. We know the heart, right, is deceitful above all things, right? But they're not that smart and they're not that evil. They're just not. But what are the principalities, again, that we are fighting against? They've been playing this chess game for a long, long time, long before we were ever on the scene. So they have a pretty good idea of what they're doing. But the people today, a lot of these plans that some of these, like the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum and all these things that they want to implement, I doubt that their plans will be successful. They may be implemented and they may achieve some success, but ultimately they can't be successful, because when you break God's law, because a lot of what they're doing is breaking God's Torah, you're going to, come into the curses of your actions. And so they can't be successful. I mean, the entire creation of the Federal Reserve System, fractional reserve lending, that's against Torah, because the Torah says you will have an honest weight and an honest measure. And that's not what we have today. There's in no sense, shape, fashion do we have that today for our money system. And the money system we have today is absolutely against Torah. This is why we have the honest weights and honest measures. You will keep an honest weight and an honest measure in your bag. That means your wallet. And we don't have that in our wallets today. So that's why our economy is in tatters, and it's going to continue to be that way, because you cannot achieve success. You cannot achieve blessings with something that goes against God's commandments. And so all of these grand plans these people have, again, why does he sit in the heavens and laugh? He's like, he says, you imagine a vain thing. It's your vanity that makes you think you can print these dollars into oblivion and achieve, equal wealth for everyone, but that's not going to happen. It's never happened. And if we had just gone back to what the Father says is an honest weight and measure, you'll have lots more prosperity.
Do you think that blockchain technology is closer to that understanding of equal weights and measures? Or, I mean, how long can we go down the blockchain road before it literally becomes a block and chain us to the system, right?
I think the blockchain. Listen, Satoshi Nakamoto came out with this in 2009, which was right after the 2008 collapse, and everyone knew, if you were switched on, you were paying attention, that the banking system was going to fail because they were basically printing money into oblivion, call it quantitative easing or whatever. And so again, coming up with a blockchain, Bitcoin at the time, was just another way to understand that we are severely lacking in our monetary system, but going down a different road than what actually the Bible calls for. And so that's kind of the result of Bitcoin. There's a lot of reasons why I like Bitcoin. It is finite, which is exactly what gold and silver is, basically on this earth. Is it's a finite resource. You only have so much, and you can only use it for so much. And so there's a lot of ways the way Bitcoin is set up that is the way gold and silver has always been, copper too, at a lesser extent, has always been used throughout all of human history. A lot of the other things that have come out since then, the altcoins and stuff like that, also it's a mixed bag because so many coins are different and have different results. But I've been in the Bitcoin game since 2011. I bought 3 Bitcoin and I sold them. I bought them for like less than $20 and I sold them for like 200. And then I got back in the game later in like 2016, 2017. But I'm recognizing this for what it is. And it's basically just a Band-Aid to fix a problem, when all we need to do to fix the problem is just to go back to what the Bible calls an honest weight and measure.
Right on. So I know you don't celebrate pagan holidays, but what do you think about holidays like the 4th of July and Thanksgiving?
Yeah, so we see lots. People will say the same thing about birthdays, and here's my take on my personal opinion. I don't really put a big emphasis on birthdays. I don't put a big emphasis on 4th of July or Thanksgiving. We will get together with our family and celebrate Thanksgiving usually. But the reality is, you go back to the Bible and you will see all kinds of different examples of people, righteous people, giving thanks for certain things that have happened to them. I look at the 4th of July and I see all it is a celebration of a military victory. That's the same thing that we have in the book of Maccabees. Okay, something that was done. Birthdays. It's the same thing that Abraham did with Isaac when he celebrated the weaning of his child Isaac. He had a feast. It wasn't one of God's feast. It was, I believe, a difference between I think it was called a mikra in the Hebrew, and so that was different than a moedim. You have moedim and you have a mikra, and so a mikra was just a feast for the occasion. And it's okay to have those, And today we have more like birthdays. We don't really celebrate the weaning of a child. We used to, even 200 years ago in this country, when a child was weaned, it was cause for a celebration. And they would have a small get-together or party. But, those are how I look at those holidays. There's plenty of examples in the Bible where they give thanks for certain things, military victories, weaning of a child, something amazing happens. And so they give thanks for that occurrence or that event. And then they go on. But they always keep the feast because those are the feasts that matter. Those are the feasts that that the Father says we have to keep. Those are the times where he says, I must meet with you on these times. And those are non-negotiable.
Keeping celebrations is also an integral part of building and preserving a culture. And I think in the Babylonian, modern system that we have, they give us all of these holidays to help give us the culture of Babylon in a way. And it helps distract us because if you just cut off and don't do any partying the whole year, you're a pretty boring family. So they
look at childbirth. Well, look at the childbirth. Like, we used to celebrate when someone had a new baby, and now it's like in society as a whole, oh wow, you brought another child into this world, and this is like your third one or fourth one, or God forbid more. It's like it's something that it's looked down upon. Whereas it used to be a celebration. Hey, we brought a new life into this world. We brought a new person, and that none of that is done today. It's all and that's again, it's something that like you said, builds community, builds culture, and there's reasons why even Torah Hebrew communities need to celebrate when things like that, when a marriage takes place. It's a reason to celebrate and to have a feast and to get excited about what that means.
Yeah, nowadays our culture's like, yeah, who wants to come over to my vasectomy party? Hey.
God says, God says, those who hate me love death. And when you're having a vasectomy, that's you just celebrated death because you're no longer able to produce life.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to tell about how our culture is going the opposite direction as we should. Just like you said, what's good is evil and what's evil is good.
We're there.
We're definitely there. Oh, man.
Steve Mutria and Adam Fink. Hello, guys.
Hello. Shalom.
All right, today we're going to be talking about the Christmas season today, specifically around the celebration of December 25th in association with the birth of Jesus. And we're going to be talking about the cultural significance of this holiday, its relation to Torah-observant believers who are seeking to apply a more scriptural-based practice of tradition in the way that we do our celebrations, our festival keeping. And we're going to compare and contrast because there's a lot of people who are really questioning this topic, especially during this time of year when we're recording this. I mean, it's the winter solstice, guys. Did you know that? We're like right on the cusp.
Almost
the
there.
Darkest time of the year.
Mm-hmm. 2 days, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is a fantastic conversation. Now, I've done numerous shows in the past with different media groups revolving around Christmas. Steve, of course, has produced several different teachings on the topic, and Adam as well. And so we're going to have a really great time. And we want you guys to be a fly on the wall. This is just going to be a conversation of concern between us as individuals, people who've been involved with, the community that's coming away from traditions that we've uncovered as lies or things that we've inherited in innocence and kept in ignorance are the things that we've all challenged in different aspects of our walk. And so it's a very important conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Amen.
Awesome. I mean, that's why we're doing this topic, guys, because the things we do with the family members that we're around, the friends that we have, it's the culture we build. And our goal, hopefully, is to be, biblically based culturally, right?
Amen.
And I think that's why it's so important to first look at this topic in the modern context, which is what I'll be bringing to the table in today's discussion. We're going to start off with something very special. I hope you guys enjoy this. We have a special guest. So you're telling me you're like a festive Babylonian empire.
Exactly. Just like the Babylonians.
These guys over here are looking at me like I'm crazy, almost like I was interviewing myself or something. But the truth is, the reason I'm making these illustrations is because those are the two options on the world stage. The secularist view of Santa Christmas, and then the faith-based perspective of observing a holiday to commemorate Christ's birth. And so these are the two things that people are balancing back and forth. And oftentimes we find the people that are holding tightly onto this one, the secular Christmas, are using Jesus and their faith to justify family traditions that are full of warm, fuzzy memories. And I think that's the slippery slope, because it really is the only time of year that people get together and are around family, spending time. It might be the only time of year that somebody gets a gift from somebody that they love. And so I can absolutely understand that people are holding on to this time frame tooth and nail, really. But we have to be looking at alternatives to the world system, because that's exactly what the world system has been designed to do, just like I was trying to illustrate with Babylon, is they want us to forget who we are, identity-wise and culture-wise. They want us to replace it with the commercialized modern version. So, Steve, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, to me, when I look at all of the Christmas element, I understand the desire. I understand the intention, because we were all there at one time or another, But Yahweh said, "You shall not worship me in their ways," and that's in Deuteronomy. In fact, I've got it somewhere.
Yeah, it's Deuteronomy 12,
Thank
30,
you.
30 through 32.
Okay, and I've got, in verse 4, "You must not worship me and Yahweh your God in their way." And so now it seems to be coming about lately is that they're not worshiping him in their way. All these traditions that they're now taking back up, they're saying came around long after the pagans developed them, if you will. And now they're saying that the pagans stole them from the Christians. I'm just reminded of a verse. Forgive me, I can't remember where it's at. Maybe you can think of it for me. That's in Isaiah. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. And this is, to me, what we're seeing. They're taking that which is evil and they're trying to say it's good now.
Awesome. Yeah, I heard you mention so many older names like the Rothschilds and Carnegie, and I don't know why the name that popped in my head, because I've been thinking about doing a history story on it, but P.T. Barnum. Can you tell me anything about P.T. Barnum?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously comes out of the nobility class or the elite class, and again, he was sort of standing against the status quo of the standard elite. But I would look at him just sort of fitting in better with the group than what Trump does. From an adversarial or non-adversarial, he would be probably the dark hat versus the white hat in their allegory. And it's not that white hats have good intentions for humankind. They have a different approach, a different tactic, and they are of the same pantheon beliefs. So they may on the short term help humans, but on the longer term, they have the same agenda and they have the same gods that they worship. So I would put PT in there, and with the circus aspect, and you bring in a lot of different other belief systems through that circus act. You have the clown aspect, you have the gypsies, you have all sorts of other things that are sort of in the darker side or the black magic side of polytheism. So I would say he probably comes from there. Again, absolutely sort of revolutionized entertainment, but that's not unusual for people of either the white or the dark side of polytheism, but not significant bloodlines again.
When you bring up the two topics of Donald Trump's bloodline and his kind of representing the white hat, and then you bring up P.T. Barnum and the kind of the black side of the whole equation, I think it's so amazing, Jeremiah, that you set up the interview starting out like this, because Gary, I'm really interested if you could walk us through the concept of the Hegelian dialectic and how there's these opposing forces set up throughout history to kind of prop up the the equation that allows them to control the world. And maybe you could break down how you have throughout history these white hats and black hats and people who fill these roles to create the equation of the Hegelian dialectic, which is the creating a problem and then offering the solution for that problem. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, and both before and after the flood. So they have the same structure set up after the flood as they did before the flood. And it sort of underlines in Ecclesiastes 1, where there's nothing new under the sun, what was will be again. And as you move on to that passage, it talks about the understanding of this only brings grief and sorrow. So lay that down for what we're going to talk about on how the transgenerational nature of this structure has been with us ever since the creation of the Adamites. So it's important to understand it. So they have two major belief systems within their belief system. There's a macro dualism and there's a micro dualism. And those are my terms and not their terms, but just in my own mind, I like to be able to segregate it. So in their mind, in that dualism on the macro level, Satan is the equal of God. And God would be just another archon or angel, or one of the 12 archons that Sophia created through this nebulous male life force. And Satan would also be one of them, and is competing with the God of the Bible in their belief system. So you might imagine for both the dualism that I'll get into next as well, a chessboard where you have black and white, right? And they continue to play the game, and in a lot of the imagery of polytheism, we'll have Satan sitting on one side of the chessboard and God supposedly on the other side, and this war never ends. You might lose one game, but the next game you might win the next game, and it goes back and forth throughout the history. So that's the macro that they look at, and why they believe they can win their own realm as long as they keep fighting, because that they are equals and nobody ever wins this war. Now, within polytheist religions, they have white magic and black magic. They have good giants and evil giants. They have good witches and evil witches. And we need to understand wizards and witches and magicians as being the priest class and the priestess class. And so on each side of the white hats and the black hats, as it's been set up, they're going to have their own set of leaders and priests, kings, and governments, and they're all rivals as well, which sort of goes into the mix. And they're all rivals because they all want to be that dynastic bloodline that's going to run the world. So when we look at the inner level and the visible level, we would understand them as the visible representatives of the invisible ones. They are the spurious offspring of the fallen angels, the demigods as they're understood in antiquity, and giants as they're understood in antiquity, and Nephilim and Rephaim as they're noted as two of the names for giants in the Bible. And that they are working the agenda of the invisible ones, the visible ones. And so you have on a chessboard white and black. So that goes on earth as it is in heaven in their belief system. And so they receive their power from their heaven, from Hades, Sheol, Argatha, and when all the different names they have for their place where they believe their gods dwell all around the world. And they receive their authority through those gods as well, and the divine right to rule. And so that's the system that they have set up. And that as we see that sort of play out in modern politics, that's where that uniparty thing sort of comes from, that concept, or a rhino. It's all sort of an extension of that. It's just not clearly sort of defined for people. And so anybody who stands up against that directional system that wants to end up in the same place, even though they have two different tactics in terms of how to get there, they're going to get crushed if they're not following or playing ball, or they're going to be at least tried to be crushed or eliminated or canceled, whatever words that you want to use on that. So how that works is look at two poles, polar opposites, and they're working from both ends to cattle herd people in one direction. And so their essential core policies are nuanced differently, but not essentially different. So if we look at that today, you have that perpetual war gene that's in effect. That if you want to look at the Republicans as the establishment party, they have that perpetual war gene, and they have globalism as part of that as well, and several other policies that are identical to what the establishment of the left would be. And there would be a few differences as you get a bit further left and a little bit different right, but they become sort of nuances and sort of smaller pieces to their policies and things like that. So they're moving things in the same direction, maybe at a different pace, maybe one that's better for Christians as it seems on the short term and not as painful, but nonetheless they're going to end up in the same place. And they've used that throughout history. So whether or not you look at how history is written, it's always good guys and bad guys, right? Fairy tales are good guys and bad guys. And this is their belief system. And that they receive this, I think this war gene, allegorically speaking, because I don't believe there's actually a war gene, but it seems to be part of their DNA. I think they receive this from their celestial mafia godfathers, and that they were created to ensure humankind did not reach their destiny, which is to be raised up like angels and to be inheritors of eternity. And so they do what the fallen angels don't do. The fallen angels know the power of God, and they do not like to get blood on their hands because they know what God could do to them. So they created the offspring to do all of that for them. So when you see people slandering God, you're likely not going to see a fallen angel do that, but they'll have their offspring do it and their followers do it. I think we're going to have lots of Antichrist figures. There's going to be wannabes, and then there's going to be legitimate contenders. And even though we could probably will be able to identify him with being involved with the negotiating of the covenant of death in Daniel 9:27, we still want to be careful because he's not actually becoming Antichrist. That begins his rise for the first 3.5 years of the last 7, but he's actually crowned as he's described in 2 Thessalonians and in Revelation, which is the time of the abomination at that time. And that's when we can clearly identify him. Although I think unless there's multiple people that are taking credit for that's creating the covenant and spreading out the actual sort of infamy of the one that is the key player there, we'll be able to identify him at the beginning, but he's not. We have to keep in mind he's still not Antichrist, and Babylon still is in control.
I love so much how you describe it as a multi-headed beast almost. You describe the warring bloodlines as all putting forth their valid candidate to fulfill this role of this prophetic figure of the one who will rule the world, the New World Order. And I think it's so beautiful because the way you describe the competing bloodlines of who's to become Antichrist really does parallel the vision that John has in the book of Revelation with the multi-headed beast and the Antichrist representative coming from one of the heads of the beast. And it's just a really interesting concept. And I had a question. It's kind of a multi-layered question, so if you'll bear with me as I walk you through kind of what I'm asking here. But it's in relation to the topic of the Antichrist. And I know Rob used to love to talk about how the Tower of Babel and Nimrod, the figure, had so many parallels to the Antichrist that's prophesied, just in terms of this rippling wave of biblical prophecy that seems to repeat itself throughout history, which is why we have so many examples of Antichrist-like figures, even way back in the past, such as Pharaoh and King Herod, and these figures who kill the firstborn child, and these figures who come and try to impose their authority over the Most High's people. We have Pharaoh and the 10 plagues of Egypt, and the parallels there with the 10 plagues of Egypt and the judgments in the book of Revelation with the trumpets and the seals. But here's the question. It's in relation to the Antichrist, and
Isaiah 46:10 is a well-known verse, and it says this. It says, I make known the end from the beginning, and from ancient times what's still to come. I say my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. And so there's this biblical premise that there are secrets to be revealed in ancient times as we see a pattern manifest in reality that we are in today. And so there's some interesting Hebrew linguistic characteristics in some of the poetry called chiastic structures. And for our viewers and listeners who aren't familiar, chiastic structures are where the beginning is also the end, and it kind of has a palindrome-like appearance where it's kind of like a mirrored image, so to speak. And you see it in the way that the Hebrews wrote some of their psalms and various aspects. And so I'm kind of applying this idea, Gary, of a chiastic structure or like a palindrome to this premise of we'll know the end from the beginning. And so if this premise is plausible, if it can be looked at as a mirrored image, we have the words of Christ himself, right? That the coming of the Son of Man will be likened to the days of Noah. But if we're approaching that time period from a mirrored image, what event precedes, in a chiastic structure, in a palindrome image, right? What precedes the days of Noah? Well, in the scriptural account, it would be whatever directly followed it in kind of our biblical narrative, right? So what comes after the flood in the narrative is the Tower of Babel. It's the sin of Nimrod and the scattering of the people and the languages. So it's almost if you know how we had cassette tapes back in the day, and you'd put them in your VCR and it'd say, be kind, rewind. It's almost as if we're rewinding time, and prophetically things are playing out in this kind of rewinded fashion leading up until the Antichrist and then the days of Noah, as the Messiah talked about. So is there anything that do you have any thoughts on this concept, and are there any direct prophetic parallels you see with the days of the Tower of Babel and Nimrod and today's world, the one world government, the one world language, the one world currency? What are your thoughts? Because this goes hand in hand with some of Rob's research.
Yeah, it's such a terrific question and principle that I think is very helpful to understand where we came from, where we are today, and where we're going. So, and it fits well in with the days of Noah allegory. Nothing is new under the sun. And we also get a passage in 2 Peter 3, that's talking about, in the beginning with the destruction of fire, and that this is a destruction that's reserved for the end time again. So all of that is to help us sort of understand this cycle that happens, that the spurious offspring and the fallen angels that produce the spurious offspring both have been at war with God, and both have been trying to ensure humankind that we do not reach our destiny, with the spurious offspring doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So if we start to understand that, then I think we need to look at, from a flood perspective, what's going on with the flood and maybe why the flood comes. Maybe the flood is permitted, or God brings the flood, keeping in mind polytheists say that the gods brought the flood. However it happens, as you mentioned, God is Alpha Omega. He knows the beginning of the end no matter what. He knows all the decisions and things that are going to play out right from before creation. And that I think maybe the flood might have been brought so that there wasn't that destruction by fire, which is reserved for the end time. And that when you look at the days of Noah allegory in the book of Luke, it not only has the days of Noah, but the days of Sodom and Gomorrah that's destroyed by fire. So it's like a linkage to that destruction as well. And by inference and passages that go together with 2 Peter 3 and the days of Noah, is that the crimes at Sodom would be the same as the crimes before the flood. And I think that's when I say other passages like Jude 1, for example. So without getting too far down that trail on the minutia, let's look at what probably happened before the flood. Well, you have sort of a concept that we need to understand, that if the Antichrist is coming, and the Antichrist spirit has been with us for a very long period of time, as we're told in the New Testament, and that this is like a beast spirit, these allegories start to come together from an Old Testament perspective, and that we should understand that perhaps that destruction by water, which may have prevented the technology level that may have been before the flood, which we're just catching up to today, that has the ability to destroy the earth by fire, may have been in play with all of the violence and the wars of the giants. And if that's the case, then one deduces there would be an Antichrist figure before the flood, even though we're not provided that scripture or text in the Bible. Just to be clear, I'm speculating here with the cycle aspect. And that in polytheism, we get accounts of Antichrist type figures like Zudra in the Indian religion, or you have subcontinent of India, or you would have Orion in the Greek mythology, the Orion the hunter, and another one, and it may be the same individual, might be Atlas, who was the king of Atlantis with the 10 kings that was trying to take over the whole world to implement the anti-Atlantean religion that I believe is Enochian mysticism from Son of Cain, that dominated the antediluvian world, and they were going to impose that, and it didn't happen, and the flood came. But again, it's because the Antichrist, as in the Antichrist, is reserved for a specific ordained period of time. So it's plausible there would have been an Antichrist type figure, and the same crimes that happened before the flood would likely again happen after the flood, and somehow, some way, depending on how you want to get there, survival, DNA, another arc as in survival, I guess, as well, or a recreation or a combination of the above. We have giants recorded after the flood, and we also have the Babel incident 101 years after the flood. And you have the offspring gods that are recorded, whether it's in the Sumerian text or the Greek text or the Ugaritic text, which is a really good one to look at in parallel with the language of Semitic, original Semitic to Hebrew, which is a Semitic language. You can take words back like Rephaim or Gibberim and Herman and those other words all back to the Semitic that's used in the Ugaritic text. And it describes Baal, offspring god of the parent god El, who ruled before the flood, and along with Anat and other gods of the Baalim council.
Let me begin this evening by expressing my gratitude to the American people for your outpouring of love and support following the assassination attempt at my rally on Saturday. As you already know, the assassin's bullet came within a quarter of an inch of taking my life. So many people have asked me, what happened? Tell us what happened, please. And therefore, I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. It was a warm, beautiful day in the early evening in Butler Township in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Music was loudly playing, and the campaign was doing really well. I went to the stage, and the crowd was cheering wildly. Everybody was happy. I began speaking very strongly, powerfully, and happily, because I was discussing the great job my administration did on immigration at the southern border. We were very proud of it. Behind me and to the right was a large screen that was displaying a chart of border crossings under my leadership. The numbers were absolutely amazing. In order to see the chart, I started to, like this, turn to my right and was ready to begin a little bit further turn, which I'm very lucky I didn't do, when I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood, just absolutely blood all over the place. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack, and in one movement proceeded to drop to the ground. Bullets were continuing to fly as very brave Secret Service agents rushed to the stage, and they really did. They rushed to the stage. These are great people at great risk, I will tell you, and pounced on top of me so that I would be protected. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together.
People get demonetized, taken off of YouTube or whatever, and whenever it comes to like being able to speak freely, I kind of wanted to get into the topic of music, because now that we're seeing like the WHO and stuff is censoring speech, and they're censoring speech on all kinds of topics, flat earth, whatever. But music is such a powerful tool because you can literally sing about anything and have like that freedom of expression. And I think that's a new avenue for a lot of people to start sharing truth now that we're entering into this 1984 age of censorship. And so I wanted to like talk to you a little bit about music and just the power of music and its influence on people. Because I mean, I know that was a big part of your past. And before you jumped on, you know, you were talking about yesterday you were practicing with your band. So I think that's pretty cool. But like, could music be the answer to get around all this censorship?
Maybe. Maybe.
Have you ever checked out Charles Manson? Have you ever checked out his music, Jake?
You mean the Beach Boy songs?
No, the actual Charlie Manson's music. Like Dennis Wilson actually recorded Charlie's first album in studio, but he has a whole album, and then he recorded somehow an album in prison. It's crazy.
Okay, I'm back.
Cool.
What's up?
Who recorded an album in prison?
Well, we were talking about Charles Manson, and I think he's one of the most like.
Oh.
Like it's crazy. Like in my opinion, I mean the whole Charles Manson thing. I mean, I think he shouldn't have gone to prison for life for not doing anything. But before Charles Manson was convicted of that, like Charles Manson wanted to be a musician. He was actually a Beach Boy. Do you know that?
He wasn't a Beach Boy, but the drummer of the Beach
Dennis
Boys,
Wilson
wanted to produce his album. He was in the middle of producing an album for him, and then Charles Manson got crazy one day, wanted to fight the engineer or something, so they abandoned ship.
Yeah, well, it was actually Charlie Manson wrote a song, and I actually have an example of it if you want to hear it, but he recorded a song called Cease to Exist, and then Dennis stole that song, and the Beach Boys named it Never Learn Not to Love, and that's why he was pissed. It's like there's so much stuff to the backstory of that. It's just so fascinating.
Play it, I want to hear it.
Oh, but can you pull up that? So this is Charlie.
Just
come and say you love me. Give up your world. Come on, you can't be.
That's the Beach Boys. So that's why I call him a Beach.
Dude, they ripped them off. They ripped them off.
Yeah, and that's why he was so mad, and it just fit right into their narrative when they convicted him, which was, you know, Bugliosi wanted to write that book, and it all has to do with the song "Helter Skelter." I mean, off the White Album, because it was too grungy, and that's what set him off. You know, it's just so weird. I mean, this book is the biggest true crime book of all time, and this is the prosecutor. That's insane to me.
Yeah, I've went down the Charles Manson rabbit hole many times, man, many times. That he was a CIA psyop.
Oh yeah.
You know, he didn't even want. He'd been in jail his whole life, in and out of juvenile detention. He didn't want to. He didn't like regular. He was just like, okay, you want me to do what? You want me to start a cult? You want me to get these runaways together and experiment with them, like using CIA.
Well, it was MK Ultra.
Yeah, it was MK Ultra, and the same that they used in, you know, in like you said, MK Ultra and CIA operations. It's like it was obvious he was supported, funded by the CIA. There was FBI involved. I mean, he probably was a bad guy. I mean, he's been in and out of jail, but
yeah.
He got used, and he was just he probably did a lot of horrible shit. He probably had some, you know, murders, you know, on his hands and all that. He was a bad guy for sure, but he was directed by intelligence, and it was some kind of intelligence MK Ultra experiment. He got out of jail. He had credit cards. He had a bus. He had the access to that ranch. You know, like it looks like
it's too convenient.
Some kind of psychological MK Ultra operation.
You know, there's actually a JFK connection with the CIA, and Manson is the same guy that was his handler, was actually Jack Ruby's handler, who killed all. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't even need evidence for that. That just makes sense. You know, that's just like, yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, it's crazy. We did a whole episode about it, but it just, I mean, it's amazing how much MK Ultra. I think they're using it on a mass scale today on us, on, you know, TV, using, you know, all their propaganda tools, and they've mastered the art of MK Ultra. And so they just, you know, project it on us all the time. We don't even know that it's happening sometimes, you know, but every once in a while.
I think they want us to think that MK Ultra is like one-on-one. You got some guy in a room and they got a helmet on with all these electrodes and they're zapping him. But the real MK Ultra, the most important MK Ultra, is the television and, you know, now social media. That's the real MK Ultra.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's tied to the Helter Skelter thing in the music industry. I mean, Manson tied to music, Beach Boys. They saw how powerful and influential music could be, and so then you see in the 90s the whole hip hop, you know, government prison system conspiracy, as they then used music to then lead people into becoming like much more enslaved in our, you know, slave pond, as you put it. But yeah, I mean, that's why I think music is so interesting, and seeing like throughout history people having a voice and that being quieted. We have an opportunity now to share these conspiracies and truths, but then we're getting shut down when it's on like a preaching format. But whenever you sing music, or, you know, you have a groovy tune and you put truth in that, the natural barriers that people have, the cognitive dissonance, I feel like those walls come down, and you know, it's easier to get through to people, you know, if you sing about something meaningful.
Yeah, like quercetin. It's quercetin with the Q. That's a supplement that you're supposed to take with zinc or your vitamin D or really any vitamins. And the quercetin isn't a vitamin, but it's the vehicle that takes the vitamins into the blood cells or whatever. Like without the quercetin, zinc can't get into the blood cells. So you take zinc with quercetin, then it takes the zinc in because the quercetin gets in and the quercetin gets in and that's zinc with it. And that's how you get zinc in the cells. That's how music works. Music takes the words into your soul. So if the music, you vibe with the music and it's moving you and you love it and you're rocking like, I love this song. Whatever those words are in that song, they're getting into your soul. Without the music, the words can't get into your cells. The music is the quercetin to the lyrics. That's what takes those lyrics into your soul.
Yeah, that's so well put. I mean, nobody likes to be preached at. Nobody wants to be told off how they're blind and dumb on whatever topic, and it makes sense that there's got to be a vehicle of delivery. So,
exactly, that's what it is.
I love that we're all three musicians too. That's pretty awesome. That we could just sit down and like talk about music and conspiracies and stuff. That's pretty awesome.
Wake up the people, all the blind sitting under the steeples, all the lies and inherited evils. Wake up the people.
Yeah. Drifting away. Yeah. And what do I say? 'Cause I would do anything just to get you to stay. 'Cause I love you, baby. Yeah, I love you, baby.
Hell yeah. Now the music I'm doing now is I had little conspiracies in the music I've done my whole life. Even when I was 18, writing speed metal music, I didn't know shit about how the world was run. I just knew it was bullshit. And I was in a band called Resistance. I played drums. I was 16, 17, 18. And it was always like anti-government. It started off like satanic shit to scare Christians because I was atheist. But then I got tired of writing evil satanic lyrics and started writing like I had a song I wrote when I was 17 called Without Recovery. This speed metal song that was about the economy collapsing. I didn't know shit about the economy. I still don't know shit about the economy. But I was writing about, the song was about the economy collapsing, and now all the rich people, they're all on the streets with the poor people. Now we're going to eat you up. Now your money means nothing to us now. And now you're one of us and we're going to eat you alive. That's what I was writing.
I mean, it's kind of prophetic. I mean, that's kind of what's happening now, right?
Kind of. I don't know what I was talking about. I don't know. And now I'm writing. Currently, I'm writing. I made an album of shit that I always done but never recorded professionally. I always wrote joke songs on acoustic guitar, just songs that were like 5, and I would like send them to those 5 people, and then I would forget about the song, and then I'd write another stupid and silly song on acoustic, and then 3 people would hear it, and then I never recorded them professionally. Like the real music I did was I was doing hip hop for people that don't generally like hip hop. I wanted to make because I love rap, but most of the music I don't like. I came from metal, I came from goth, I came from industrial. I want to hear that music, but I love that rap has no limits. Like rock lyrics have limits. Rock lyrics have to be metaphoric, vague, poetic. 99% of my favorite rock songs, I have no idea what the song is really about. Like Smashing Pumpkins, one of my favorite bands ever. I don't know what any of those songs are about. I just found out what Cherub Rock was about last week. I saw an interview and he said it's about selling your soul in the music industry. I'm like, damn, I thought it was about hookers. I had no idea. But I love that song, Cherub Rock. So my point is, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's what makes music. And I think Roberta Flack, who I know no songs from, but I remember the quote because I never forget that. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And that's music. That's music right there. It's how you say it. And it doesn't even matter if you know the meaning of it. It's what is the vocal melody. Like I said, I never knew what Cherub Rock was about, but those vocal melodies are golden, and I don't even know what the lyrics are about until recently. So it's the vocal melody. The meaning of the lyrics are icing on the cake. If the meaning of the lyrics are great, if you wrote great lyrics, that's the icing on the cake. But the most important thing with music is, what is the music doing? How are you what are the melodies doing? That's the quercetin. That's what gets into your soul, is the combination of all the layers, the bass, the drums, the keyboards, the guitar, the synth, the strings, all that shit. And then the vocal melody on top of that. And the vocal melody is comprised of words, which is vocals are like an instrument, but there's words. It's like a 5D synthesizer of vocal melody, because every word sounds different. So that's like a different keyboard program. So the lyrics and the vocal melody, not the meaning, not really the meaning. The meaning is that's just the icing. If you got a great music and the lyrics are just average, it doesn't even matter. The music, that's one of your favorite songs, and the lyrics, as far as the meaning goes, the meaning is like there's a lot of songs that are about nothing. Yeah. There's bands that write songs and they brag about it and they talk about it. They go, dude, this song is literally about nothing. We just had one line. We had one line, and then we just come up with a bunch of different lines to go with it, and we make a song, and then people think it's about this, people think it's about that, but it's about nothing. It's just random cool lines that we put together. We made a song, we named it this. There's so many songs like that, because people at the top, they know that the meaning of the lyrics is secondary. It's all about the music and the vocal melody. It's the vocal melody, not the meaning of the words. It's the vocal melody. The meaning of the words, if it's a great meaning and you got some intelligent lyrics, that's icing on the cake. But I'll tell you what, if you had super intelligent lyrics and they just had so much meaning and they meant so much to you, but the music wasn't shit, you wouldn't listen to that song anyways. It's a waste of lyrics.
That's true.
The Bible.
I never believed the moon mission, really. That moon mission, maybe as a kid I did, but that was really one of the first ones. Like, oh my God, it's so fake. Yeah. And from that point, I didn't trust NASA, but I thought NASA was just about the moon and the moon missions. I didn't know NASA was everything space. So once I found out NASA was everything space, I'm like, oh my God, maybe the world is flat. Maybe space is fake. NASA is in charge of all this shit? I thought they were just in charge of the moon. I didn't know they were in charge of all of space.
Yeah.
So that's when I figured out, like, oh shit, we're in a lake, dog. We're in a prison lake, and there's a bunch of lakes, and we're just prisoners. And the United States is just the best minimum security prison. We're just the best one. Everyone's trying to get to the best prison. This prison, they let you have guns, they let you talk any kind of shit you want, and then let you do any religion. And this is the best. This is like the ultimate prison.
Like, I know my dad would have loved to just talk with you, because Jake was the one who told me, and I didn't realize this because he sent me a clip. My dad did before he died, and Jake was telling me how cool it was that you were talking about him, and then he sent it to me, and we actually have the clip. Do you mind if I play it?
Play it. Let me hear it.
All right, let's play it.
We've already been down this road too many times over a 50-ounce steak.
I sent you the video of the Rob Skiba video where he goes through all these declassified documents from NASA and CIA.
That's the one we talked about on your show.
These are documents like the original Project Bluebeam stuff.
No, had nothing to do with.
No, I mean it's the same thing. It's like make something up and then make it the big story.
No, these documents had nothing to do with flat Earth or space or the moon or anything in space or stars, but they're NASA documents, declassified. And Rob Skiba, he's a very well-known flat Earth researcher. He's like right up there with Eric Dubé, except Rob Skiba's into the Bible as well, and Eric Dubé isn't. But they're both pretty popular. So Rob Skiba's got this video. Go to his channel, and he's on NASA.gov going through these declassified documents of documents and testing of calculating the motion of missiles and high altitude aircraft. Like this, it was all about calculating whether you're talking about trajectory or speed or interceptions of missiles and high altitude aircraft. Had nothing to do with space, nothing. It was all about calculating the motion of high altitude aircraft, military aircraft, and missiles. And all these documents, there's a bunch of them, and Rob Skiba goes through all of it. And he's on their website. He goes, look, in order to calculate the motion of any of these aircraft, you have to, the first assumption is you have to assume that we live on a flat, non-rotating Earth. Flat, non-rotating Earth. Over and over and over. It has nothing to do with space. And in order to get the numbers right in these calculations, in these computations, you have to assume that we live on the craziest conspiracy theory ever. A flat, non-rotating Earth.
But like you said, that's actually out of the Bible and out of most ancient history.
No,
most religions claim the Earth is flat.
Yeah, what happened to the Coriolis effect? Hold on.
Yeah,
what happened to the Coriolis effect? Like, oh, snipers have to calculate the spin and the rotation of the Earth to hit their targets, at a certain distance.
And then I can drive flat earthers like Eddie crazy just by asking the right questions, because I know.
Ask me the right question.
Aha! Touche.
No, explain that though. Like if there's documents, there's
like the NASA thing, like the
bunch
NASA thing.
That was epic.
Bravo.
Yeah, I still do that all the time. I send Aaron Rodgers that video too.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about putting it on our channel where you're talking about it, and then playing the actual my dad's video, because he got demonetized recently, and we're luckily still monetized. So it'd just be cool to be like, this is Eddie Bravo's favorite video of my dad Rob Skiba's, just to show because it's
that's the best video. I still use that. I still send that out to anybody that has questions. I'm like, just watch this.
Testing the globe. Look, boom.
Okay, so in the 1930s, we had both Auguste Piccard and the Russians sending up high-altitude balloons, and they're looking out, and they're not able to detect curvature. So we go forward about a decade to the 1940s, 1948. This is an official CIA, look up here, CIA.gov, okay, CIA declassified document from the Russians. Outer gravitational field and shape of the physical surface of the Earth. They're trying to figure out the shape of the Earth at all points of the physical surface of the Earth and only on the surface, whereas it is not determinable at all other points of space without knowledge of the shape of the Earth. So they're still trying to figure out the shape of the Earth here. But since the shape of the Earth is not known, 1948, the true coordinates of these points, B, L, and H, are unknown to us. So the Russians are having trouble figuring out the shape of the Earth in 1948. Let's look at another document here. Another declassified CIA document up here, right? They're checking out the firmament in this one. Let's go back to Acrobat. 1953 now. Geophysics light scattering, USSR. Trying to figure out how does light work in the atmosphere here. In the investigations, 2 instruments designed by V.G. Fezenkov were used. One of these was a visual photometer of the daytime sky intended for measuring the brightness of the firmament. Interesting. Trying to figure out the brightness of the firmament. Again, 1957. The dissertation contains a certain formula of the brightness of the sky, taking into consideration only the brightness of the first order, and derived, get this now, on the assumption of a flat Earth, and giving some conclusions derived on the basis of this formula. So the Russians are trying to check out the firmament based on assumptions of a flat Earth in 1957? Very interesting, huh? ntrs.nasa.gov document here, dated April 17th, 1961. And the missile position in space is computed relative to a flat, non-rotating Earth. June 1971. A method for reducing the sensitivity of optimal nonlinear systems to parameter uncertainty. Whatever that means. And we get down to page 12 here. And it says, a numerical example problem statement. The idealizing assumptions made are the following. Number 1, a point mass vehicle. Number 2, of the idealized assumptions that are being made for this example is a flat, non-rotating Earth. NASA making idealized assumptions based on a flat, non-rotating Earth? What's going on here? Let's continue. Here we have another NASA.gov document. Equations for angles of attack and side slip relative to both a rolling and non-rolling body access system are derived for a flight vehicle for which radar and gyroscopic attitude data are available. The method is limited, however, to application where a flat, non-rotating Earth may be assumed. Alright, let's continue. That was 1972, the end of the, or right around the end of the Apollo program. So we go to NASA again, nasa.gov, December 1978. The aircraft trajectory model employed in this study was derived based on the following assumptions. Number 1, the Earth is flat and not rotating. That's the number 1 assumption? So we're going to see this over and over and over again regarding the equations of motion. They're always using it on a flat, non-rotating Earth model, which doesn't make sense if you're developing aircraft and missiles and things like that to go over a rotating ball. Why would you start off with the assumption of a non-rotating flat Earth if the real-world application is over a spinning ball? 1987 NASA technical paper. Within the program, the nonlinear equations of motion include 12 states representing a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. Over a flat, non-rotating Earth. There are the two figures, figure 6, figure 7, over flat Earth. Army Research Laboratory. Back to NASA, nasa.gov, June 2002. Stability and control estimation flight test results for the SR-71 aircraft with externally mounted experiments. So we're back to checking out some things on the SR-71. These equations assume a rigid vehicle and a flat, non-rotating Earth. In other scenarios, only the range to the center of the field of view and the depression angle is known, so that a flat Earth approximation provides the best estimate. Alrighty then. This model works over a flat Earth and non-turbulent atmosphere. Rigid projectile model is employed to predict the dynamics of a projectile in flight. These equations assume a flat Earth. Why would you project flight dynamics over an assumed flat Earth if in reality we are dealing with a spinning ball?
So, by the way, Jeremiah, your dad had a well put together kit that demonstrates exactly what Dave's talking about.
Yeah, the refraction
Maybe you can share
kit.
about that.
The refraction kit's really cool. It's like we actually still build them. We mastered it. Excuse my cat right here. He's not leaving me alone. But it's I don't know exactly how to describe it, but there's a skyline and then magnification, and it shows with magnification. Yeah, there it is.
Yep, that's it. Right on Dave's screen.
Yeah. And so that's one way. It's not always everything. It's a combination of things. The sun is going away on the flat Earth, so it is getting smaller, but the atmosphere is magnifying it as it's getting smaller, so it's a yin-yang, right? So it kind of looks like it stays around the same size. Although depending on the atmosphere, it changes. Some days it gets smaller. Some days it gets bigger. Some days it stays the same, right? But this is just showing you how this candle is just being dragged across this table here, but it looks like it's setting. Now add an atmospheric deck in there. Forget about it. It's so easy to see how a sunset works. It's ridiculous. It's all about perspective. This is a level line. You guys have seen this, right? This is my sun. I'm just making it across the level line. This could be mountains. It could just be clouds, whatever, but we're above it and it's going across. Let me just jump forward here. And now I have a camera on the table, which is a terrestrial camera filming that line. Same line, level. Same line. The sun does not go below this thing right here, but look, it's going beyond it.
Wow.
And when something's in the distance, it looks like it is going below it. It looks like it's going below it, right? And then, as I said before, if we look, this is just going away. This line is level. This is level, right? Globers can't fathom that. This sun is just going beyond the atmospheric deck of opacity right here. It's going beyond it, and it appears to be at your eye level. However, on a very clear day, this is the sun going away, and it's clearly getting smaller and smaller and smaller because of just the atmospheric conditions, right?
Yep.
So, and there's there's also, you guys have seen my sun fade outs. This is the sun was going down, 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 and it stopped. Now, I don't care if it's out of focus. I don't care. It stopped. It should just keep on going if we're spinning.
Yep.
It should keep on going, but it sat here for almost 10 minutes. And as it's going away, it's taking its light with it. This is a super clear day, and it just takes its light with it. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and until it disappears.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
cool.
And let me just show you.
So important.
The visuals are real important. However, I just was on Roseanne Barr, and we didn't have many visuals. I did give them some images afterwards, and it was a great conversation. It's a lot less stressful for me when I could just talk and explain things rather than try to pull up stuff while I'm talking, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm going to show you one more. So this is. That's not it. Of course, as I'm saying it, I'm choking. Where is my building? All right. I have it somewhere. All right. So here is. Where is it? Wow. Everything just moved. Give me 1 second. I'll get it. All right. So that's not it. Where did it go? I have to look at another. Where did it go? Maybe because it's under sunsets. What do you think of the sun fade out? You guys have seen that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't look like it's going down. It just looks like it's just
stopped going down, and
further. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing they could say is I photoshopped it, right? So then I did it again. I live streamed it. Right? Then they say, well, it's not, you don't have a solar filter on. If I put a solar filter on, you wouldn't see the sun because it's not bright enough to push through a solar filter. So they want you to blind yourself from the most important point of when the sun gets down to your apparent eye level. What's the thing flat earthers say about the horizon? The horizon always, they can say,
eye level.
Always rises to eye level.
Rises to eye level. Yeah.
That's a false statement. It always appears to rise to eye level. But the truth is, it's thousands and thousands of feet above your eye level. All right, and if I could,
Okay.
I'm gonna show you if I could find my stupid building. Where did it go? I have. Well, I'll just go with this instead. Right. So this is the sun going away, and this is just street lights going away, and maybe this is it. Nope. Oh, yeah. So this is what we just showed you before. A terrestrial perspective, a celestial perspective level, and it goes down. All right. And I just lost my entire thing. All right. So this is the old one. I'll just show you this one instead. All right. So here is, just jump forward. So here we got a guy, got a cloud above his head, right? So draw a string from his eyes to the cloud that goes way up like that, right? And then we make these clouds go into the distance and they merge with the horizon. But we know they're all at that same cloud level deck, right? So when he looks at the cloud over on the horizon and he could look at the string going from his eyes to the cloud, he sees that string parallel with the water, right? With me?
Yep.
But if you were underneath that cloud and could see the string, what would you see? This is you under the cloud. You would see a string going from 5,000 or 10,000 feet down to his eyes. But he sees it level because this cloud looks like it's at the horizon to him. Right?
Wow.
So this guy here, you're underneath the cloud. You can see from a different perspective. This guy, this is his line that's parallel with the water. This becomes his horizon. And as the sun moves away, it goes beyond. This cloud is going to block his view of the sun, and it just goes beyond it. But that's not how he sees. You have to remember, he sees like this, right? There's that cloud, and the sun is going to go here to get lower, and it's going to go beyond, not below, beyond the cloud, and he sees that as his globe Earth horizon.
Wow.
The concept of optics being apparent and how what we witness is very subjective to our location and the atmosphere around us. It's really interesting, the argument against the ball Earth model. It often it shows that we can't trust our eyes, and then the argument they spit back at us is, yeah, you can't trust your eyes, you know. It's really interesting how we have to break down what we witness with our eyes is not trustworthy, and identifying how that still can align with a scientific model. And then of course, just like you said, they argue that, you know, we're witnessing a mirage or whatever.
Let me I found the building. So we're in New York City. We're looking straight up, very tall building, and we got the oops, that's not what I wanted. Actually, the next one. We're looking straight up at this building, and the sun is like noon, right? 12:30, 1 o'clock, right? 1 o'clock, it goes beyond the building, right? So now you're standing on the street and you can't see the sun when it goes, we'll just call it the 1 o'clock position. So when it goes right there, you can't see it. So now where's the sun? Is it below the horizon or is it beyond the building?
Beyond the building?
Simple. That's not a question. It's not a theory. It's very easy. People, you know, just it's very, very easy. It's beyond the building. So here is a perspective grid, right? Perspective, they teach us the ground ramps up, the top ramps down, the sides ramp in. It goes all to a point. But guess what? The back ramps in, right? The amount of space right here, if you look at 2 rows here, it's much less. It's all getting compressed forward also, right? So people don't realize that. So we have this guy here, and we put this mountain up. This mountain is, let's say it's 3,000 feet above his head. Okay. And the sun's up here above the mountain. Sun moves away. Is it below the mountain or is it beyond the mountain? Think of the building.
It's beyond.
Yep. It's beyond. It just went beyond. Now, prove it. He could float up in the air on a balloon and, oh, there's the sun. Or he could go backwards. So he goes backwards. Let's take him backwards 20 miles. 20 miles away. I don't care if the Earth is flat or a globe, because the globe 20 miles, what's it, like 400 feet of curvature? This mountain's 3,000 feet above his eyes. It's still, this line here is 3,000 feet above his eyes. But it appears to be at eye level. The sun moves away and goes beyond it or below it. answer's always
Beyond.
okay. Right. So now we add the clouds. The clouds are higher than the mountain. The clouds ramp down and they merge into this line here. So now we have a mountain line, which is 3,000 feet above his head. The clouds are, let's say they're 3,000 feet above the mountain. So this line of opacity is 6,000 feet above his eyes. And the sun just goes beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
It appears to be at eye level. It just goes beyond.
Wow.
That's it. Now, you can show this to an anti-flat earther, and they will ignore it, and they'll say, there's no way you can explain a sunset on a flat earth, right? Does this prove the earth is flat? Nope. It explains how a sunset happens on flat earth, because if the earth was a globe, besides us all being dead, you could have a sunset. You know, if we're on a spinning globe, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier how you think some of the current things going on, like the assassination attempt, could be because they're trying to cover up flat Earth. How close do you think flat Earth is to breaking into the mainstream? I know, after...
You guys, sorry.
I was going to say 2018, 2019, we were getting on late night TV shows, Jimmy Kimmel, everybody was making fun of it. It was like the new funny thing to talk about. And then COVID hits. There was a much larger, more pressing conspiracy that kind of made it, fold back into the background. But now as that and the attention exposing that particular conspiracy has died down, how close are we? Please continue.
Yeah, I mean, and again, flat earthers have different opinions. Some people say it'll never happen in our lifetime. I don't see it not happening in 2024. It could happen. It could take a little bit longer. But I was just on Roseanne Barr. She's big, but let me tell you something. In a couple of months, that's not going to be considered big, right? Compared to some of the stuff that we're going to be getting on. I don't want to send the trolls spiraling, because they are spiraling over my appearance on Roseanne Barr. I mean,
dude, that was epic. That was so epic to see you on Roseanne.
Yeah, and it was really Flat Earth 101, because Eddie Bravo turned her on to Flat Earth. And she's like, whoa, she had this like aha moment. I made this little video, a clip of it, and it kind of went viral a little bit. And then she's like, Eddie told her to have me on, and she did, and it was amazing. And you're doing something right when the trolls are spiraling crazy. There's some other big shows. But let me tell you something. People laugh. Oh, Dave thinks that this whole thing with Trump was to stop Flat Earth. I was just about to go on a very big show, and they sidelined it for now because of the news. Okay, and rightly so. I get it. In this world, this is what they got to cover, right? But so I say it kind of jokingly, but it actually happened. It actually happened, right? It sidelined it for a little bit. They already know the Earth is flat. They just haven't realized how important this deception is, because it's the way they get away with everything, from the ear, from the non-gushing blood ear to amazing, to everything else. It's because we're spinning out of control, disconnected from God, lost in space, living in lack, living in fear. And that's how they control us. So some bigger shows now are starting to understand, and they are willing to have the conversation.
I love Roseanne because she gave my favorite stand-up comedian his first job. It was Norm Macdonald. So I thought that was super cool.
Great. Yeah, and so many people have so many bad things to say about Roseanne now. Roseanne, it was she like broke the ice for women comedians. I grew up listening to her show. It's funny as hell. And she actually inspired me on my truth journey. I told it on Roseanne. I told it on the interview. She was running for president. I don't know, partly as a joke, but probably partially as real. And she didn't hold back. And I was just like, you know what? I guess I shouldn't hold back either. And that's what kind of made me start going forward from there.
That's awesome.
Pretty cool.
That's sweet. What is the best way for people to start getting connected with local flat Earth community meetups? Start to get to meet people in person. What would you suggest for any listeners that we have? How would they get connected?
All right, so thanks for the tee up. Everyone's going to accuse me of telling you to say that, but that's not the case at all.
Yeah, we didn't set that.
My Flat Earth Clock app, which you can find at flatearthdave.com. It's a $3 app, and then there is a subscription for $11 a year, which you don't have to get. It gives you all the information you need. But some of the higher functions, you might want to do that. You can earn a free subscription too, just by telling people about the app. But here is the Meetup Maker, and a lot of people don't realize this yet. You hit the Meetup Maker. Oops, you know what? I just installed this, so give me 1 second. Give me 1 second to just get this going. Hold on 1 second. Say something while I'm typing.
Well, just on the topic of breaking into the mainstream and all these big shows, big names, and personalities, I really think it's the people that can overcome the stigma against the flat Earth title and even being called a conspiracy theorist by all the trolls and all that. If they're willing to put their neck on the line, so to speak, and risk it, just like, guys like you, guys like Rob over the years, when they finally crossed over to questioning cosmology, they were willing to risk quite a lot, whether it's your audience, following you along. But whenever you see people with these big followings, these big syndicated shows or whatever, willing to have the conversation, it's pretty encouraging. I mean, it gives me hope for the future. If there's not any more giant false flags to totally, squash out any possible alternative view of cosmology. But
all right, so on the Meetup Maker, I'm testing a new version of the app. You can go and you can sort by date, you can sort by location, just say, hey, anything within 100 miles, anything within 500 miles. I just sorted by date, and you can scroll from meetup to meetup. These are meetups that people are having, and anybody can put one on here. If you're having a small meetup, and let me tell you something, if you schedule a meetup and 2 people show up, you now have 2 best friends that are local to you, right? And so these are just meetups that are happening across the world right now, because I just did sort by date, which gives you everything. Flat Earth Social, which I just did in the UK. It's every the last Tuesday in every month, I believe. Awesome ones. But very important, on here, if you go to the bottom, it says alert me to local meetups. If you click that and you select your radius, I have it set for 1,000 miles right now just because I'm curious, put in my email address, and that way, anytime anyone schedules a meetup within that radius, I get an email with a link to the meetup. So there's so many times you go to a meetup and people say, oh, I didn't know. I wish I had known. The next day they hear about it. It goes, I wish I had known. I wish I had known about the meetup. And so now you have no excuse because you'll get an email with a link to the meetup. So that's a great way. The other thing here is the matchmaker, because the world is so messed up. It's hard to find like-minded people. You go in here. I set it for. I have my birth year 2024. That way, I'm 1 year old. That way, I'm not going to show up in anyone's thing because I'm just doing it for testing purposes. But if you put your age in there and say I'm looking in females, we'll say just this age group, like 56 to 65, right? Whatever. And there's one local to me. All right. So if you go, let me just do a wider, let's just say all for now, search. And here's 3 in that age group. And then you could switch, you can just scroll from person to person. I have it with 100 miles. If I go farther, let's just say 1,000 miles, right? And then you could find like-minded people for just friendship or, who knows what else. And lots of people, takes a moment to load here. Lots of people are meeting, and there's already flat Earth babies made.
Hey,
That's great.
Yeah.
But aren't we all?
Yeah, we all are, right? But again, on the app, you have messaging. You know, and I tell people like, that's kind of dangerous. No, everything, the world is dangerous if you want it to be. You start messaging with them. You just click the message button. You can do video calls. You can look at them. You can see, this person's a little sketchy. Doesn't have any referrals. I say you don't want people that have high referral badges. Then it's kind of like a rating system, and it's absolutely amazing because everyone in here is like-minded on all of the important topics. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that way.
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah.
What's about to happen, y'all? Check this out. What's about to happen? What's about to happen?
Here now, here in the year 2024, early 2025, and we're waiting for specific events to happen. That's why we're looking here at star alignments. But when you look in the book, in our example that we were given in the book of Joshua, and how things go down when we go through these shifts in spirituality, or whatever you want to call it, we see again that it happened thereafter the Jubilee year had ended. You see in verse 10, it says, and the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at even in the plains of Jericho. Tav up there, or our cross up there, or our mark. We see that, yes, that planet is within the square. But when we look closer, we see that there's one outlier. Out of all of the wandering stars, there's only one that's not in that part of the sky. That's the planet that's the closest to the sun. But like we said, it's not necessarily used like 31st, the first day of the month. So we'll start our feast week somewhere around April the 14th. And yes, that's when we'll be seeing a lot of this activity, the rise of these morning stars. And then you see on or about the 24th of April, we'll start to get prepared for the new moon again, which should be seen around April the 28th. And then you see around May the 15th, one of the morning stars starts to go away. And I'm just curious as to what the dawn sky would look like in August. So looking here at August the 1st, we see we have one morning star there, right beside the righteous star, or the judgment star. But then we don't see the other morning star to arise until around the 17th or the 18th. But we see the new moon to appear somewhere around the 24th of August. which would make it the 5th month. So if we was to draw a line, we see that all of these planets on the 25th are aligned. Actually, a fourth of the sky, if you think about it. Look a little closer. Continue this line straight, and this one's straight. All of those particular wandering stars are in a certain quarter of the sky. So now when we zoom in a little closer, we start to see these stars that are moving a little bit faster. Now, in my studies, what I've learned is that these stars that are farther out can be used for timing. Like, for instance, if you were to put the judgment star, the righteous star, on a clock with the Sabbath day star, you'll find that they align every 119 years, which is a multiple of 7 and adds to significance. But we cover that in other videos, and we'll do so more.
To the honey. I love it when you call me Big Papa.
And although most people think it's just in sci-fi movies, it actually exists in real life. These jet-powered bags can hit speeds of up to 80 miles an hour, accelerating to 30 miles an hour in just 1 second. Racers have to train hard and wear tons of protection because with all that speed, accidents are bound to happen. This is jet bag racing, and although most people think it's just in sci-fi movies,
I ain't no regular pedestrian, you heard? Oh yeah, now this is what I'm talking about. They finally letting us take the law into our own hand. Yo, my man, what are you doing? You see me out here with the brick? I ain't no regular pedestrian, you heard? Oh, all right. Oh yeah, now this is what I'm talking about. They finally...
Check out our new and improved BabylonRisingBooks.com, where you can get Rob Skiba's books, bundles, DVDs, DVD-ROMs, videos, and so much more. You can even get Sheila and Jeremiah's books, so check it out now.
It's about that time for an all-new Oppa's Corner. Take it away, Oppa. There's nothing there.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
Welcome to another Oppa's Corner. So, how about another Oppa's Got Talent? The classic song, 50 Ways to Wake Your Owner. Just walk on his back, Jack, by the right hand stand. No time to be coy, Roy, you got to have food. Step on his nuts, Gus, don't need to meow much. Just gotta be rude, Jude, and soon you'll have food. Just walk on his back, Jack, by the right hand stand. No time to be coy, Roy. You got to have food. Step on his nuts, Gus. Don't need to meow much. Just gotta be rude, Jude, and soon you'll have food. And I would walk 500 feet, and I would walk 500 more just to be the cat who throws up on the rug, not on the hardwood floor. The turkeys singing their hit, Already Gone. Well, I heard some people talking just the other day, and they said you were gonna roast me on a rack. But let me tell you, I got some news for you. You'll have to settle for tofu, 'cause I escaped the pen and I ain't coming back. Bohemian apathy. Nothing really matters, anyone can see. Nothing really matters. The only one who matters is me. Cinderella meets her fairy godfather. They're right on your back, they're gonna get whacked. Bibbidi bobbidi boo. No, it's okay. Come on, people now, help out each other, please. Nobody get together, must avoid one another right now. The classic song, Don't Stop Retrievin'. Some will win, some will lose. Some were born to chew on shoes. Oh, the chasing never ends. It goes on and on and on and on. Enter House Cat. Lay me down sound to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Hush, little human, don't say a word, and never mind that noise you heard. I just flew up under your bed. I'm in your closet. I'm on your head. Exit light. Enter night. The classic song, Every Meal You Make. Every pie you bake, every hot pancake, every New York steak, every damn cornflake, I will want that food. When you gave me bad food, it hurt me to my soul. You didn't take the hint when I stared at the bowl, but I'll get my revenge. Gonna put you in your place. I just licked my rear end. Now I'm gonna lick your face. Friends. So no one told you life was gonna be this way. Your food's a joke, you're broke, you want treats but can't pay. It's like you're always stuck inside a drawer. When you scratch like mad, wanting so bad, but they won't open the door. I'll be there for you when you barf on the floor. I'll be there for you. Yeah, I've done that before. I'll be there for you, 'cause you're there for me too. Could you be any more of a clean freak? I may not always love you, but long as you keep giving me food, you'll never need to doubt it. I'll step on your face and shout it. God only knows what I'd eat without you. I just called to say I want food. I just called to say fulfill your role. I just called to say I want food. Give me food. I see the bottom of my bowl. cannot throw up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I knock stuff down. This will be stuck in my head for days. David Grohl's cat. Now I'm looking to the sky to feed me, looking for a sign of life, looking for something to eat. It's 4:05. Mess up the song, you're the piano cat. Walk on the keys today. When the human is playing a melody, it's your job to get in the way. Pervana. With the lights out, you can see us. Here we are now. Time to feed us. Don't be stupid. You can feed us. On your face now. Time to feed us. Margaritaville cat version. Sniffing some catnip, watching the sun dip. My silly humans mixing a drink, playing with some string on the front porch swing. This nip is so good I can't even think. Sleeping all day again in Margaritaville, playing with an old shaker of salt. Don't really care, I knocked it under a chair. He left it out. It's my human's fault. Don't know the reason. This catnip's so pleasing. Helps pass the time when there's not much to do. See a broken mug, some barf on the front rug. What happened here? I haven't a clue. Sleeping all day again in Margaritaville, played with that old shaker of salt. Don't really care that it's stuck under a chair. Listen to me, it's my human's fault. I slept on a flip-flop, I batted a pop-top. Rather have wet food, but ain't gonna beg. But there's nip in this cat toy, and soon I will feel joy. Then maybe go scratch up that old sofa leg. Sleeping all day again in Margaritaville. Watching this guy still search for his salt. He won't look there under that big leather chair. I feel no guilt. Yeah, it's all his fault. And now for the funnies. Late at night, and without permission, Reuben would often enter the nursery and conduct experiments in static electricity. Well, sir, my client said he wasn't having any fun, and that you just kept chasing him and chasing him around this mulberry bush, and that's when, out of self-defense, he decided to pop you one. As Niles left the safari club, his stomach suddenly knotted up. Foolishly, he had ignored the warnings not to park his Land Rover in this part of Tanzania. It's a cute trick, Warren, but the Schuberts are here for dinner, so just abracadabra this thing back to where it was. Sweatpants, sweatpants, sweatpants. Interestingly, while certainly the largest, Jupiter also has the shortest day of all our planetary neighbors, with a new sunrise every 10 hours, meaning that if it were habitable, there would be approximately 2.4 times as much cock-a-doodle-doodling as there is here on Earth. Curses! How long does it take Igor to go out and bring back a simple little brain, anyway? While Granddad searched for the end of the tape, the children cut the wrapping paper, then went to bed, finished college, got married, had kids of their own, and retired out of state. Voila! Your new dream home. If you like it, I can have a crew mixing wood fibers and saliva early as tomorrow. So, Shredder, either you put on one of these new uniforms, or you're out of the gang. Egyptian archaeologists discover the world's oldest fruitcake. It's still edible. Making sure not to disturb their quarry, nature lovers would approach the glass slowly, hoping to get a good look at the normally shy desert animals. Acting class. Assignment. Pretend you didn't get fed. If you do something wrong, just look at them like this. Squirrels in training.
Okay, here comes a bunch of cars. Let's remember the 3 S's. Scamper into the street, scramble around, and stop for no reason.
Hey, come on now. You two were made for each other. Preacher from the Black Lagoon. Buoys and grills, let's praise Cod and turn to Ephesians 6:12. Are we in the right place?
Well, Mr. President, let's see. Carry the 1, take away 3, carry the 2. That would be
407 years ago. Creative dog writing. Call of the Calf by Zeke. I sensed the mailman's fear as he opened the gate. It was like a warm stench in the air, so thick you could cut it with a knife. Suddenly I felt myself growing dizzy, as if the fear was some powerful drug. The entire yard began reeling, and then I heard his soft, plump calves begin calling to me. Zeke, Zeke, bite us. Zeke, bite us. R.J. Harwell, born 1914, gave up smoking 1959, gave up booze 1973, gave up red meat 1983, died anyway 1991.
Dang! Get my shotgun, Ma! The aliens are after the chickens again!
Community Center. Starting soon. Cat obedience classes. Book now. Here are the blueprints. Now look, this is going to be the Liberty Bell, so we obviously expect that it be forged with great diligence and skill. Tonight, Produce Poetry Slam. I'm getting old, but I'm not through. You think I'm rotten? I say, you. I'm spotted brown, and my name is Fred. Not going to be put in no banana bread. Woo! Grammar, punctuation. Yes, a winky face is correct. But in ancient times, the semicolon was actually used to separate archaic written devices known as complete sentences.
What happened to my blouses? Dang it, I bought the wrong detergent.
Yuletide. And you need a brain, and I need a heart. What's up with these guys? I need eyes. Hair. I need a mouth.
I need a nose and feet and fingers.
I need pants. Interesting. Interesting. Well, I'd say we taste a little like chicken. Unfortunately, no one believed the Turkinator. Guys, I'm not kidding. I'm a robot from the future. Your lives are in danger. Come with me if you want to live. Charlie. Huh, you got quite a business there. And that concludes another Opa's Corner.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
Opa's Corner is now available on my own YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Now it's time for an all-new History's Mysteries. So today for History's Mysteries, we're going to be talking about the truth about Bonnie and Clyde. To some, Bonnie and Clyde were like a Romeo and Juliet, and to others they were murderers and a robbery duo. So they were responsible for a 21-month crime spree from 1932 to 1934. Allegedly, they robbed gas stations, restaurants, and small-town banks, mostly operating in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Missouri. However, there's much more to the story, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's go ahead and play this first clip.
May 23, 1934. It's just another beautiful spring morning in Louisiana. On the surface, everything seems as quiet and calm as always, but in the background, trouble is brewing. On a highway near the small town Marsalis, a group of police officers lie waiting for 2 of America's most wanted criminals. They were preparing for an ambush to catch America's favorite partners in crime, Bonnie and Clyde. The story of Bonnie and Clyde is insane. They were these armed robbers and murderers that were practically escape artists. They had evaded the police dozens of times, traveling across the country robbing people, while capturing the hearts and minds of America. So if the police wanted this ambush to be a success, they would have to take them by surprise. Just 2 days earlier, the cops had caught word that the pair was heading to the house of an old family friend, Iverson Meffin. Here was their chance to trap the couple when they least expected it. This was the best chance they had come across in over 2 years, so this time they had to get it right. So the cops came up with a simple plan. They convinced Bonnie and Clyde's family friend Meffin to loan them his car. The cops then parked the car on the side of the road, the same road that they knew Bonnie and Clyde would be taking that morning, and hopefully seeing their friend's car on the side of the road would be enough to make them slow down just enough. And that is when the cops would strike. Everything went just as planned. The cops parked the car on the side of the road, while 6 police officers hid nearby. And just as they had hoped, Bonnie and Clyde came driving down the road. As they got closer, they noticed the parked car up ahead. Recognizing it, Clyde slows down and looks out the window. And that was all the cops needed. Within seconds, the cops unloaded their guns into Bonnie and Clyde's car. It sounded like a complete war zone in the middle of Louisiana. And in the end, Bonnie and Clyde's car was hit by around 130 bullets in total. The couple died almost instantly. Bonnie was still holding a half-eaten sandwich as her body slumped out of the car door. Both of them had their guns in hand, but they hadn't even had the chance to fire back. For most criminals, that would be the end of it. The news about their death would fill the headlines for about a week, and soon after that their names would be forgotten. But not Bonnie and Clyde. The moment everyone heard that they had been killed, crowds rushed to see their bullet-filled bodies. It was a spectacle. A mob of people literally chasing after a bullet-torn car with 2 corpses still in it. The crowd got so desperate, so chaotic, that people even started cutting off pieces of their hair and ripping off bits of their clothes to take home as souvenirs. Someone even tried to cut off Clyde's era as a souvenir. It was madness. These were murderers after all. But no one seemed to care that they had spent years robbing banks, stealing cars, or that they had killed at least 13 people. Thousands of people attended their funerals and mourned their deaths. And today, almost 100 years after being shot to death, we're still talking about them. Movies, music, books, TV shows, YouTube videos. I mean, even their bullet-ridden car is still a major attraction in Las Vegas that you can go see right now. All of this was because Bonnie and Clyde tapped into something special. It was the height of the Great Depression at the time, when 1 out of every 4 people were unemployed, and people were desperately looking for something to look up to. Enter Bonnie and Clyde, the romantic, rebellious couple taking their lives and careers into their own hands. And even though today everyone has pretty much heard of the name Bonnie and Clyde, the real story of Bonnie and Clyde is even crazier than you think. This is Bonnie and Clyde, America's infamous partners in crime.
So Bonnie and Clyde were hit by over 130 bullets and were killed by Texas Rangers in Louisiana. So that's kind of my first thing, is like, why were Texas Rangers allowed to kill them in Louisiana? They're crossing state lines, you know. They're not the feds, they're not the FBI, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. But I would definitely call that overkill. And I mean, this was during the Great Depression when they were viewed like Robin Hood figures. I mean, they were like folk heroes. So it's kind of weird to think about now because, you know, I mean, I guess we're closer to a Great Depression than we've ever been, but they were like seen as like movie stars. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. At the time, they were the most famous couple in the country, and if not still one of the most famous people to ever live. Let's dive deeper into the next clip, which I call The Good Girl and the Bad Boys. Check this out.
Before the crime spree, before the shootouts, before the infamy, there was just Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. Bonnie and Clyde both had pretty tragic backstories. Bonnie was born in 1910 and lived in Rowena, Texas with her parents, older brother, and younger sister. Her life was fairly well-to-do until her father passed away when she was only 4 years old. Faced with no other choice, the family moved to a poverty-stricken neighborhood in Dallas called Cement City to live with Bonnie's grandparents. Even though she had a rough start, Bonnie was still seen as a good girl. She was a smart student who earned honors, and she was particularly interested in poetry and literature, a passion that would continue even during her criminal career. Bonnie loved music and performing on stage. She even participated in school pageants and sang Broadway hits at talent shows. Bonnie loved movies and would often tell her friends they would see her name in lights one day. Only about an hour away from Bonnie's home in Cement City, a young Clyde Barrow was growing up. But he didn't have nearly as nice of a reputation. Clyde was born in Toledo, Texas, a little over a year before Bonnie. He was the 5th of 7 siblings born to a very poor, almost destitute family of farmers. They were so strapped for cash that the family spent a few months living in a wagon and then later, a tent. When Clyde was 12, they gave up on farming and moved to West Dallas, where his dad opened a gas station. Like Bonnie, Clyde also loved music from an early age. He taught himself how to play the saxophone and guitar, but he didn't have the good grades or promising future that Bonnie did. From the very beginning, he was your typical bad boy, thanks mostly to the influence of his big brother Buck. The brothers started out with small crimes, petty theft and things like that, but soon they dropped out of school and found their criminal forte: grand theft auto and armed robbery. In 1926, at the age of just 17, Clyde was arrested for the first time. At the same time, an almost 16-year-old Bonnie was preparing to get married to one of her classmates, a guy named Ray Thornton. And it wasn't long before they both dropped out of school and got married. But looking back, it seems Bonnie had a thing for bad boys. Her new husband Roy was almost never at home, and just over a year after getting married, he was arrested for robbery and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Bonnie and Roy never actually got divorced, but they never spoke or saw each other again either. Down on her luck, Bonnie ended up moving in with her grandmother and got a part-time job as a waitress to support herself. She would write in her diary about how lonely and sick of her life she was. She craved something more, something better, and so did Clyde. But just as they were making their way into adulthood and hoping life would get easier on its own, all their best intentions and biggest dreams came crashing down around them. It was the beginning of the Great Depression and the beginning of Bonnie and Clyde's infamous partnership.
Now, their story is so close to me because I grew up in the same area of Dallas where they were from. I mean, just hearing all the stories and like that gas station that was showed, they just knocked it down, but it was there until like last year, and the cafe that she worked at is still there, and their graves are both in Dallas. So if you guys want me to film that, if you guys like this episode, I'll go do that for next week. But they were definitely folk heroes, and Bonnie always wanted to be famous, and little did she know at the time, but because of Clyde, Buck, and the other people in the gang, she would be one of the most famous people in history. It's just kind of weird how that happened. But now we're going to be talking about the beginning of Bonnie and Clyde, how they came to be. So check this out.
The Great Depression took its toll on America pretty quickly. In the wake of one of the country's most turbulent financial crisis, Bonnie lost her job waitressing, and life was looking worse than ever. And that's when it happened. 19-year-old Bonnie was hanging out at her friend's house in West Dallas when 21-year-old Clyde Barrow walked in. It was love at first sight. Bonnie and Clyde bonded over their shared ambitions. More than anything, they both craved fame and something more than the poor, low-class lives they were destined to live. But, given Clyde's criminal streak, their relationship would have to jump some hurdles first. Only a few weeks after they met, Clyde was arrested on multiple counts of car theft and robbery. He was sentenced to 2 years at Eastham Prison Farm. But, unlike her husband, Bonnie thought Clyde was worth waiting for, and not even prison could stop their romance. In fact, Bonnie looked at it as just another challenge to overcome, and the best way to do that was obviously to break Clyde out of prison. So during one of her visits, Bonnie managed to smuggle a gun to Clyde. Back then, prisons weren't exactly high-tech buildings with cameras and guards on every floor. And Eastham Prison Farm, where Clyde was being held, looked like nothing more than a really big farm. So a gun was more than enough help for Clyde to escape, and he even got a few prisoners out with him. Unfortunately, it only took a week before they were recaptured. This time, an extra 14 years of hard labor was added onto his sentence. But instead of breaking his spirit, this only made Clyde more desperate to get out of prison. During his time at Eastham, he was starved, abused by guards, and allegedly assaulted by other inmates. Clyde was just about to try his most daring escape plan yet, when his mother worked out a deal with a judge and somehow got him out on parole. He was free. Here was his chance to get back on the straight and narrow. There was just one problem. When Clyde got out of prison, he was absolutely sure of just 3 things. He was in love with Bonnie Parker, he was nowhere near the end of his crime spree, and he would rather die than go back to prison.
So because of the Great Depression, when Clyde got out of prison, he knew he had to live that life to survive. I mean, it's almost like he was a victim of the Great Depression and what life was like at that point in time in history. Now we're going to be talking about life on the run, so check this clip out.
It didn't take Clyde long to return to his old ways. Like most people sent to jail, he came out a more hardened criminal than he went in. There weren't exactly a lot of job options for an ex-jailbird during the Great Depression, and Clyde figured that by robbing and stealing, he was just taking what he deserved. But the government owed him for letting him rot in jail. But this time, he was going to be more calculated. He started putting together a group of thieves and criminals that would eventually become known as the Barrow Gang, and Bonnie was by his side the entire time. He couldn't bear to be without her, so he brought her along. This was the start of their robbery spree. They were having a grand old time robbing gas stations and small stores to make ends meet. Until April 1932, when one of their robberies went wrong. Clyde managed to escape, but Bonnie was caught and put in jail for 2 months. But in typical 1930s fashion, when a grand jury deliberated her case, they came to the conclusion that a woman would never participate in a crime voluntarily. Obviously, she had been forced by the gang. So, she was released and immediately went running right back to Clyde. And let's be honest, no one really cared about Bonnie and Clyde when all they were doing was running around stealing things and holding up tiny stores. But that all changed in the summer of 1932. Clyde and one of his gang associates were in Oklahoma when they were approached by a sheriff and his deputy. Without any warning, Clyde and his friends started shooting. The sheriff was killed, the deputy was injured, and Clyde Barrow was officially a cop killer. This was a much bigger deal to law enforcement, and it marked the beginning of Bonnie and Clyde's life on the run. Over the next 2 years, they became famous for evading arrest. Every time they managed to get away from the police by the skin of their teeth, it only made them more well-known. By the following year, Bonnie and Clyde were starting to become household names. In April of 1933, cops found out about an apartment where the gang had been hiding. They surrounded the place and a shootout went down. But even with all the bullets flying around, Clyde just dove through the garage door, past the cops, and escaped. Inside the apartment, the cops found a bunch of Bonnie's poems and rolls of undeveloped film. Pictures and words that would go on to be famous for nearly a century. This new evidence told a compelling story. 2 criminals in love, fighting against the world. Police quickly slapped their photos on the couple's wanted posters in the hopes that more people will recognize them. But that only made them more famous than ever. Suddenly, The image of Clyde being a ruthless gang leader and Bonnie as a cigar-smoking, gun-wielding sidekick was front-page news, and people loved it. It was cool and sexy and totally different from most people's reality during the Great Depression. Even if they were committing crimes and killing people, America was entertained. Bonnie and Clyde were the Great Depression's Robin Hood figures, stealing money from the man, giving the system the middle finger, although they never gave any money back to the poor. But for Bonnie and Clyde, the high was never meant to last.
Now, in my opinion, I believe that you're innocent until proven guilty, so we don't really know if they killed these people or not. I mean, we'll get into their death later, which I think is kind of messed up. But Opa, what do you think about this story so far?
It's extremely interesting and very eye-opening as far as I'm concerned.
So let's learn a little bit more with this next clip, so check this out.
Bonnie and Clyde didn't mind killing people if they had to, but they didn't like murdering just for the sake of it. It was more like if they didn't shoot their way out, they would end up in jail or dead, and that just wasn't an option. But they weren't naive to the reality that their spree was unsustainable long-term. Quite the opposite, in fact. In one of her poems, Bonnie wrote, quote, "They don't think they're too smart or desperate. They know the law always wins. They've been shot at before, but they do not ignore that death is the wages of sin." End quote. Quote, "Someday they'll go down together, and they'll bury them side by side. To a few, it'll be grief. To the law, a relief. But it's death for Bonnie and Clyde." End quote. It was like she had a glimpse into the future. The only thing Bonnie got wrong was that they weren't buried together against their wishes. On that fateful day, when the couple was ambushed on their way to their friend's house, when everyone pushed and shoved to get a glimpse of their corpses, they were surprised. They didn't see two scary, hardened criminals. Bonnie wasn't even 5 feet tall, and Clyde barely weighed more than 125 pounds. They were small, unassuming, normal-looking people. And that's the thing about Bonnie and Clyde. Most of their glamorous criminal story was just that, a story. Even the photos that had gone 1930s viral at the time were later believed to be all an act. The couple was amused by America's perception of them and took the photos to poke fun at their gangster image. Bonnie didn't smoke cigars, and Clyde was thinking of ending their crime spree long before cops ended it for them. The truth was, neither of them liked life on the run. It was hard, dirty, and depressing. They spent days on end driving around and sleeping in shifts, trying not to be caught. They ate sardines from the can because they couldn't afford much else. They bathed in rivers and rarely, if ever, felt comfortable. To top it all off, the pair wasn't even very good at stealing money. They never got more than $1,500 from their robberies, and sometimes only got away with as little as $80. But that's not the type of story that sells papers. And so, even after they died, the story of Bonnie and Clyde lived on. The couple achieved the fame that they had hoped for. It just wasn't in the way they thought.
So Opa was telling me that he found the gas station. You want to pull that up? So that's what it looks like now. It's just a plot. So that's the official story of Bonnie and Clyde, but I think what law enforcement did was wrong, and that's my opinion, and that might not be your opinion. I believe that, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty. They should have tried to apprehend them, but they didn't. They just ambushed them and opened fire. They didn't even have any guns in the front seat of the car. They were all in the trunk. And so everything was propaganda by the FBI. All the things that you were hearing from law enforcement was from the FBI, from J. Edgar Hoover himself. So I want to show you this kind of sick propaganda piece of footage from the FBI talking about Bonnie and Clyde, and then it'll even show the Texas Ranger scene and the actual scene of the crime. So let's go ahead and play this.
The Law Library for legal study by the agents and by the FBI Police Academy students. Planning a raid, the art of attacking a gangster stronghold, how to take cover, battle strategy in the war against crime. Each field division has this complete equipment: handcuffs, leg irons, high-powered glasses, searchlights, receptacles for evidence, fingerprint kits, cameras. The G-men have killed only 9 public enemies, but these were the most dangerous, the deadliest of killers, gun in hand. Others surrendered through fear, because the FBI policy is always to have its G-men better armed than the underworld, to have better weapons and to use them better. The agents must qualify every 30 days as marksmen to be ready for new Dillingers, new babyface Nelsons. Machine gun sharpshooting from a fast-moving car.
here's the messed up part.
Director Hoover supervising field practice, and the target might be a gangster car.
Closeted gay guy.
This is what happened to Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow in a battle with local officers.
Fact check false. It didn't explode like that, but
Now 600 shots a minute.
kind of overkill. They're kind of showing how to overkill.
He will kill and kidnap no more.
So this is the actual scene.
Search finally brought the officers who were detailed to concentrate all of their efforts day and night to the apprehension of Bonnie and Clyde to a spot on a gravel road in the state of Louisiana. For 3 days and nights, these officers lay in wait on this road, but Bonnie and Clyde were wary. There is a sort of a tradition among peace officers of Texas that Barrow was possessed of some sixth sense, like a wild beast, which foretold of danger. But on this morning, this sixth sense did not serve to warn him of their presence.
It looks like the car, fellas.
Is this a recreation or is this the actual scene of them getting shot?
This is a reenactment, but they're real photos here in a second.
Get ready now.
So this is all propaganda by the feds.
That's him, fellas. He reaches for it, let him have it. Look out!
Now viewer discretion is advised. There's
Death is at the
a photo or a video. So this is real footage of the car. There's Bonnie Parker slumped over to Clyde Barrow. I don't see any firearms in the front seat.
Retribution. Here is Clyde Barrow and Bonnie
Now in the
Parker,
trunk,
who
they had a
died
lot of
as they
guns,
lived,
but
by the gun. Bonnie is seen leaning against Clyde. Clyde was a master gunman. Seldom did anyone ever live.
so remember
And
this
Clyde
scene
got the
for
first
my
shot.
next clip. They were stopping
Clyde
to help a
Barrow's
friend.
main, his guns, spiked at last by the law. 2 sawed-off shotguns, 2 machine rifles, 10 automatic pistols, and 1,500 rounds of Barrow and Parker death car. Every one of these holes was made by the steel-jacketed bullets from the high-powered rifles in the hands of the officers. Many of these bullets passed entirely through the door on Clyde's side, through Clyde's body, struck Bonnie.
So the cool thing about that clip is on our way back from the Sacred Word Revealed conference in Atlanta, Georgia, my mom, my beautiful wife, and I made a special trip just for you guys to that spot where that happened. So go ahead and check this out.
Right here is where Bonnie and Clyde would have pulled off the side of this road right here to try to help a friend, or who they thought was their friend.
That's so cool that you guys actually went to the
I'll play
spot.
a video to show you guys, but they pulled off to help this guy, and they were in these woods right here. They had law enforcement and Texas Rangers, which is weird because we're in Louisiana, all hiding with guns, with rounds, and they just started going. Like they just started shooting. And then I guess right here where this marker is where it would have been the car, because his foot was not on the brakes, the car was not in park, so he was rolling, and they thought that they were trying to get away, so they fired more rounds, and then they were barely recognizable.
Okay, and let's see, what does this say?
It says this site, May 23rd.
It's very hard to read.
19 something. I'll have to look that up.
People
Clyde
drive by
Barrow
and they
Bonnie
shoot it.
Parker were killed by law enforcement officials. Erected by, what does that say?
Bienville
Parish Police?
Police Jury.
Weird.
And then this one is the original.
This one was, I believe, the thing that it was
For
like
the
the
law
marker for the law enforcement that said
that lost their lives.
not that lost their lives, but the ones that were in the ambush, the ones that killed Bonnie and
I
Clyde.
think it's not here anymore. I know. I wonder who took it out.
Because, you know, defund the police.
Oh, really?
Well, we are in Louisiana, so maybe. I may or may not have said something I didn't want in there. There's a trail back here, so you can see. And I guess people have walked back here, but this is where they would have gone to. It's all brush. It's all brush, so they would have not even seen what was coming. And then they just opened fire. Oh, it would be like, well, I guess if they were shooting this way, wouldn't it be
Oh, yeah, it would. It'd be that way.
I guess people would probably try to do it over
It looks like there are new bullet holes in it.
Pretty cool. I've just seen some of my favorite vloggers come here, and that's it.
You need some pennies?
Actually, I got a penny.
There's a dime one, Kenny.
All right, say iridocyclitis.
Iridocyclitis.
This is actually, once you get over there, let me take y'all's picture with mine.
Like this? And this is how I act in real life. Kind of goofy.
Okay.
So you said this is near Lebanon, Missouri, or where was that?
No, this one is in Louisiana. That's where they were shot. Anyways, this is me and my Bonnie Parker right there. I thought that was a cool photo. But that was in Louisiana, so I don't know how Texas Rangers had the jurisdiction to go to Louisiana to open fire on Bonnie and Clyde. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me, because they legally can't do that, but I guess they can do whatever they want, you know? I mean, they don't really have to abide by the law, I guess. But yeah, I do have one more clip, and it seems like everywhere Lindsay and I go, whether it be vacation or when we work, when we go to a festival or whatever, there's always a Bonnie and Clyde connection. And like I said earlier, if you guys like this Bonnie and Clyde thing, I will film all the places in Dallas and have it for next week. So check this out. So what is this?
This is where they used to stay.
Bonnie and Clyde?
Yeah, and there used to be a sign on the bed that said Bonnie and Clyde slept here. But now they don't have the sign anymore.
They shamed Bonnie and Clyde.
They probably got complaints.
Why? Liberals? It says memories now.
There's trash in the corner.
It looks like Christmas decorations. So this was allegedly one of their hideouts.
Bathrooms that was removed during the restoration process when the cabin was returned to its original size. The date was out of 1940. But this was a Camp Joy cabin. And it says that they stayed in a Camp Joy cabin here.
And then here in San Antonio is a letter from Clyde. And then they also have a car that they allegedly stole on one of their crime sprees. Now, if you guys want me to go to Dallas and film the Bonnie and Clyde sites, like where Bonnie worked at the restaurant, or their graves, or, you know, anything that has to do with Dallas and Bonnie and Clyde, leave a comment in the comment section and just say Bonnie and Clyde. That's all you got to do. So you guys let me know. So that's all I got for Bonnie and Clyde. Do you have any final thoughts, Opa?
Nope. I think you were pretty thorough. I did manage to get a shot of the gas station before they knocked it down, or actually the original.
Do you want to pull it up? That's what it looked like when the Barrow family owned it. Now, not only was it a gas station, but the family lived in the back because they were so poor. And it's a shame that Dallas just tore it down. And it was within the year or so. What about you, Jake? Do you have any final thoughts?
My thoughts on Bonnie and Clyde, I think it's amazing that even back in the day, the society was turning them into celebrities despite their evil doings, you know, and I think it's so cool that you guys went to the actual locations and kind of showed the old video, and then we're like, this is where it's at in today's world. Like, this is what it looks like now.
Yeah, and I mean, were they bad people, or were they a product of the time, of the Great Depression? Were they a victim, almost? But, I mean, if what they say is true, they're not such good people, and, you know, either way, they're folk heroes to most people, or, you know, killers to some, you know?
To submit a story, topic, or have any other inquiries, please email submit@skibanewsnation.com. Also, you can email Jeremiah Skiba personally at jeremiah@skibanewsnation.com. Also, email Jake personally at jake@skibanewsnation.com. If you want to write us a letter, send us something, help support us, or just say hi, please send your letter to Jeremiah Skiba, P.O. Box 560-271, The Colony, Texas 75056. If you write us a letter, I'll do my best to write you back.
Hey, Skiba News Nation family, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Skiba News Nation. If you want to help support us, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you will get exclusive content, shoutouts, and much more. And you can also support our channel by getting yourself some new Skiba News Nation merch. Thank you for coming on this journey with us as we continue to stay on the quest for truth. Huge shout out to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you. If you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation. Also, you can listen to Skiba News Nation podcast on your favorite podcast platform.